Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto x Yasaka Highschool DxD Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Sensei. Naruto called out to the man to the left of him as they traversed through the dense forest in an attempt to catch up with their target. Their target, which happened to be flying up ahead on a large clay bird while barraging them with small explosives. Small glimpses could be seen every now and then when they would be passing by a clearing. Blue eyes narrowed as Naruto spotted another small clearing up ahead. Deciding to take his chances, he channeled a small amount of chakra to his feet before propelling himself forward. Wait! Naruto Kakashi began, only for his words to fall on deaf ears as he watched his student quickly gain speed. Reaching the clearing, he flashed through a set of hand seals with speeds that would make Kakashi proud while simultaneously shocked that his student was capable of nature transformation. Taking a deep breath, he aimed upwards before shooting out several small wind bullets. Futon vacuum sphere, he intoned as he watched his jutsu travel upwards just as their target flew above them. Kakashi caught up to his student and watched as the small wind bullets Naruto had shot out created holes in one of the clay bird's wings. A small smirk graced his features as with their enhanced eyesight they could see the shocked expression their target wore as the clay bird destabilized. Deciding that he could question Naruto later, Kakashi quickly moved towards the location he estimated their target had crashed, Naruto right on his heels. They arrived at the area and spotted several trees that had been destroyed as a result of the crash. The large clay bird lay there in the middle, but their target was nowhere to be seen. Creating two clones, Naruto sent them towards the crashed bird, where they quickly got to work as they removed some of the clay that kept Gaara, the fifth Kazekage, and the reason they were after them in the first place, captive. Having dug out Gaara, the clones quickly returned while carrying him before Naruto commanded them to look after them. Just in time too, as Kakashi ran through a set of seals, a thick, dirt wall rising into existence as the bird exploded barely a second later. Even from behind it they could feel the heat as the explosion chipped off the sides of the wall. Sensing a buildup of chakra from beside them, they looked only to come face to face with a small clay animal. Understanding what was happening, Naruto and Kakashi jumped away, the former sending a mental command for his clones and Gaara to do the same. The small animal exploded with enough force to render the remains of the wall to dust along with a small crater with it. Naruto's eyes darted from side to side before spotting their target hiding behind some bushes and waved his arm in his direction. Kakashi was about to ask what it was that he did but silenced himself as his Sharingan managed to catch a thin blade of wind flying in the direction he had waved. Dust kicked up as the wind blade impacted the ground used previously by their target, who had come out of hiding. His long blonde hair that was tied in a ponytail was covered in dirt and small amounts of blood. Blood which also leaked out of his mouth, though he still held a smirk. One of his arms was missing and the black cloak he wore was in tatters. That was unexpected, Deidara muttered after narrowly escaping death. His lone visible eye was staring intently at the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, who had displayed feats they weren't aware of, such as elemental manipulation or the fact that he was supposed to be much more emotional and easily goaded. One look in those blue eyes of his and Deidara knew he had made a grave mistake previously taunting him, as his eyes spelled death for those who would oppose him. The arrival of several chakra signatures behind them got everyone's attention as Team Guy appeared, each of them looking a little roughened up, but otherwise they seemed fine. Yo Kakashi, everything alright? Guy greeted his fellow Jonin and rival. Deidara cursed as he knew his chances of survival had basically plummeted dramatically with the arrival of an extra team. Narrowing his eyes, and though a smirk crept its way onto his face as he thought of something that might allow him to get away. While they were still distracted by the arrival of the new team, he snuck his hand into his back before retrieving some clay. Just as their attention went back to him, they saw him ingesting said clay and his body warping. Art is a bang! Deidara screamed and Kakashi yelled for them to get back. His eye began changing to its Mangekyo state just in time as Deidara blew up in a massive explosion. Kamui! Kakashi said the same moment Deidara had exploded as space began to distort in front of all of them. Surely enough, Kakashi was able to keep the explosion contained as he sent it all to a different place. To where? Even he himself didn't know. Unfortunately, however, he didn't notice the small crack that had formed the moment he began sending the explosion away. Naruto, on the other hand, did as easily could tell that it was bad news as he could feel himself getting sucked into the crack. A quick look to his side, he could see the rest was experiencing the same problem but were unsure of the cause. His brain quickly figured out that if someone didn't do anything, then Kakashi would lose his balance, and therefore unable to send the rest of the explosion away, no doubt resulting in everyone's death. Closing his eyes with a resigned sigh, he kept his eyes on the crack that seemed to be increasing in size as dirt began to get swallowed up. Sensei, tell Ba-chan I'm sorry. Before Kakashi could ask what he meant, Naruto darted forward. He paid no mind to the screams belonging to Team Guy. Keep focusing, Kakashi, he yelled at the man as he was expecting him to stop. A second later he reached the crack before, much to everyone's shock, he jumped right in. Naruto! They all called his name after having seen him disappear in front of his eyes. Neji activated his Byakugan in hopes of seeing him but got nothing. By now Kakashi had managed to send the blast away, though he clenched his fist as he had seen what his student had done. Naruto, he mumbled as Guy's students ran past him to where Naruto suddenly disappeared. A hand touched his shoulders and he looked behind him to see Guy looking at him, a serious expression marring his face. I know what you're thinking, but it was his choice. He sacrificed himself to ensure our safety. We should think where he was sent to once we get back to Konoha and inform Hokage-sama what happened. Kakashi sighed and nodded. You're right, Guy. It's just he trailed off as Guy nodded, understanding what he meant. I understand, but for now we have to deal with the Kazekage. Speaking of which. He turned around to where he was laying. The clones that previously had been guarding him had dispelled the moment Naruto had disappeared before their eyes. Sitting behind her desk in the Hokage's office was Tsunade Senju, the fifth Hokage. Currently she was looking over several requests belonging to clans and merchants regarding an increase in funding. She scowled a bit as some of the requests were borderline absurd. The fact that several merchants were demanding more guards for their shops only agitated her further. Thankfully she was saved from destroying the desk in front of her as her assistant, Shizen, walked. She raised an eyebrow at the expression she wore before Shizen mentioned Team Guy and Kakashi had returned. A moment later both teams entered and she allowed her eyes to wander each of them before furrowing her brow as she looked them over once more. Guy, Lee, Neji, Tenten, Kakashi, Sakura, Naruto. Wait. Naruto? Her eyes scanned everyone in the room with increasing speeds and her breathing quickened in response to her distress at not seeing the spiky-haired blonde in the room with them. Kakashi! Where is Naruto? She practically demanded while doing her best to calm her rapidly beating heart. Upon the mention of his name, everyone present lowered her head as she released a gasp. Her hand came up as her worst fears seemed to have come through. No, she muttered before shaking her head. He can't. Tsunade-sama. Naruto isn't dead. Kakashi quickly spoke as he didn't want to wait and see what was going to happen. Not dead, she repeated as she sighed in relief. Her breathing calmed down to its usual pace, before leveling them with a glare that promised death should the next answer be insignificant. Tell me, where is he? Here Kakashi scratched the back of his head, wondering how he should break it to her. Honestly, Tsunade-sama? We have reason to believe that Naruto has been swallowed up in a dimensional tear. Silence. That is what met his answer as Tsunade looked at like he just told her a joke. A dimensional tear? She repeated. Kakashi, you know the punishment for lying to your Hokage, correct? It's true, Hokage-sama. Neji butted in. We saw it with our own eyes. Naruto told Kakashi to apologize to you for him, while he was busy defending us from an explosion that would have killed us. We couldn't even ask him what he meant before he shot forward. First we thought he was going to kill himself by running towards the explosion, but instead he ran slightly to the side of it. Then, before we could react, he was suddenly gone. Not even my Byakugan could pick up anything. Tsunade looked at the rest who nodded, confirming what Neji said was true. Kakashi picked up the story. Tsunade-sama, we have reason to believe Naruto acted to save all of us. While I initially didn't notice during the time I was sending the explosion away, whatever it was that swallowed up Naruto would have killed us has he not done so. Once I was done, we all noticed that we had moved several feet closer to the explosion than when we started. A few inches more and I would no doubt slipped, therefore breaking my concentration, and the explosion would have swallowed us all. So what you're saying is that Naruto once again sacrificed himself for the greater good? At least this time it was on his own choice. Referencing to the fourth Hokage sealing the Kyuubi in Naruto. Anyway, this might not be completely bad. She mused as she grabbed an empty paper and began to write. While dimensional travel isn't anything new, the circumstances surrounding Naruto's case are. Usually it happens with a person attempting a jutsu such as Kuchiyose no Jutsu. I'm sending a letter to Jiraiya and order him to come back. He should have more information regarding these matters. This isn't completely terrible for Naruto either, as without him the Akatsuki can't continue their goals unless one of their members is well versed in the dimensional travel. She tapped her fingers on her desk before looking up at those present. Take the rest of the day off. Kakashi, Guy, expect a report on my desk by tomorrow. She received 2 nods from both jounin. Dismissed. Didn't you hear me, Kakashi? I said you are dismissed. Tsunade looked at the jounin who was still present. You did, Tsunade-sama, but I want to ask something else. Ho? And that is? During the mission, Naruto displayed a mastery of the wind element. I'm wondering if Jiraiya-sama mentioned anything of it, as he didn't use any elemental jutsu during our test. Tsunade quickly shook her head. No, he didn't. Jiraiya said he had only improved the basics along with his taijutsu. Aside from that, he tried to increase Naruto's control over the Kyuubi but had stopped after a certain incident. I see. Would you mind? I would be present when Jiraiya-sama returns? Tsunade waved her hand dismissively. No, that's fine. You have first-hand witnessed his usage in wind manipulation, which will help. Kakashi bowed his head in thanks before, with a poof of smoke, he was gone, indicating the usage of a shunshin. A groan escaped Naruto's mouth as he slowly regained consciousness. The first thing he realized as he moved his limbs was that every bone in his body hurt. So much that he had to bite back a scream that threatened to escape his dry throat. The next thing he noticed was that he was currently laying in what he would aptly name the most comfortable bed he'd ever rested on. Nothing could compare to the comfort he felt as he just laid there. Not his own bed in his apartment, nor the beds he had slept on during missions, or the rare occasions he and Jiraiya would stay at a hotel during their training trip. Though the constant beeping that was reaching his ears was something he could do without, really. So, with much effort, his eyes slowly fluttered open, only for him to close them quickly as he was assaulted by a light that was way too bright for the moment. After a few seconds, he once more opened his eyes, this time much slower. As his eyes opened, he was greeted to the sight of a blank ceiling, with the only thing on there being the lights. But it looked different. A lot different from any hospitals he's been in. Eyes darted downwards, he noticed the room he was in was also much more, how'd he say, modern? Technologically advanced? Regardless, though it surpassed anything he had ever seen, even Snow Country didn't have this kind of technology the last time he'd been there. He then slowly turned his head, ignoring the small ache he felt when doing so, as he stared right at the source of the beeping noise he had been hearing. He raised his eyebrows as he looked at the strange screen that displayed some numbers and a weird pulse that went along with its beeping. It took him a few moments before he noticed it was attached to him, realizing that it was beeping along with his heartbeat. Interesting, he inwardly mused before going back to inspecting the room he was in. It was kind of empty aside from the bed, the weird machine next to him, a few paintings on the wall, a nightstand next to the bed, and that was it really. The sound of the door open gained his attention as he turned and looked as a young woman walked in. She had light brown hair and forest green eyes which were focused on some papers she seemed to be reading. She was quite a beauty if he would compare her to some kunoichis back home. He cleared his throat in an attempt to get her attention, which worked as the young woman looked up from her papers. He saw her eyes widen briefly before she swiftly turned around, leaving him alone, blinking as he wondered what just happened. His unasked question was answered when the door leading to the room he was in opened once more a minute or two later. Immediately a blush formed on his whiskered cheeks as his eyes took in the inhuman beauty of the woman that had entered the room. She had blonde hair a shade or two lighter than his own, set in a single ponytail that went down her legs, a few strands framing the side of her face. Exotic golden-looking eyes which stared at him with almost smothering intensity. She was clad in a red hakama with over it a white haori which did nothing to hide her voluptuous figure or her larger-than-average chest. Man, if Jiraiya were here, the man would have died from a nosebleed 10 times over. However, what got his attention and caused his eyes to widen to their extremes were the 9 bushy-looking golden foxtails and the 2 fox ears that peeked out from between her hair. Yet despite that, it only added to her beauty, and the words left his mouth before realized what he said. Beautiful. His eyes widened as he understood what he just said, and, judging from the slight pink that dusted her pale cheeks, so did she. Before he could apologize, however, the blonde woman spoke up, having pushed down her blush at the unexpected compliment he had graced her with. Tell me, what are you? Even her voice was soft, soothing even, and Naruto felt a shiver run down his spine. He opened his mouth to reply before stopping himself upon realizing she said what, not who. Excuse me? He asked her with curiosity lacing his voice. What do you mean, what am I? He expected her to ask for his name, not what he is. He saw her narrow her eyes slightly at him, like she thought he was playing with her. Exactly like I asked, what are you? I can sense you have chakra in you, but I can also tell you aren't a yukai. While I can sense a deep darkness coming from your stomach area, I can tell it's not your own either. So tell me, what are you? I'm human? He said, though it came out more like he was questioning himself. He panicked slightly upon her mentioning she could sense the malevolent nature of the Kyuubi that sealed inside of him. He initially wondered if they had some relation between the two but quickly shook that idea out of his mind as there was no way that could be possible. The woman in front of his gave him a scrutinizing stare for a few seconds before she eventually nodded. Unable to find a lie in his words though that didn't mean she was done with him yet though. Very well. What is your name? I am Uzumaki Naruto. Pleasure to meet you, miss. He trailed off as he wasn't aware of her name. Oh. The blonde woman held an embarrassed blush as she realized she hadn't even introduced herself. I am Yasaka, leader of Kyoto and its yokai. She gestured to her 9 tails that calmly swayed behind her back. Naruto couldn't help but stare at the appendages with awe as he wondered how soft they were as they looked really soft. Ahem. He heard her speak and got out of his daze. An embarrassed blush sporting his cheeks as he was caught staring. Though for some reason the woman in front of him was blushing as well. Ah. Sorry, Yasaka. He apologized, but the woman merely waved her hand, making it clear she was fine. Though inwardly she was somewhat surprised by the lack of sama or dano suffix he had added to her name. It was quite refreshing from everyone else she had heard it from. An awkward silence then filled the room as Naruto and Yasaka were left staring at one another. So what now? Naruto eventually asked. Well, she took a couple steps till she stood next to his bed before peeling off the covers covering him. Oh my, he heard her mumble in thin-veiled amazement as she looked him over. Taking note of the muscle his body had despite appearing not even older than 18. Not even a single scar except this one. He shivered as he felt her soft fingers trace the scar left behind when Sasuke had impaled him with his Chidori-covered fist. I always heal quick, he told her as Yasaka nodded her head before continuing her inspection of his body. So, do you think I can leave? I really hate hospitals. He grumbled and she giggled softly, which sounded absolutely beautiful to his ears. Yes, but I'd like to offer you to stay here. Seeing his expression, she explained. We found you covered in blood and your clothes in tatters in one of the many fields here in Kyoto. While you explained you usually heal quickly, you can never be too sure, correct? I'm also a bit more curious about you. The look she sent him caused his cheeks to heat up, but he didn't seem to notice. You said you were human, but it's impossible for a human to use chakra. I myself have some theories which have to do with your sudden appearance in my territory, but I won't indulge in those until I can get a better idea of who you are, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto's choice was clear the moment she said he was in Kyoto. There was not a single place like such in the elemental nations. Combined with the extremely advanced technology they had here and the surprise of these yokai that he, a human, was capable of using chakra, he knew he was no longer anywhere in the elemental nations. No doubt the weird phenomenon regarding the tear that happened back with Kakashi and the rest was enough proof that he was in, as weird as it sounded, a completely different world. Strangely enough, he didn't feel particularly sad about that fact. If anything, he felt like a massive weight was removed off of his shoulders. A weight that had been placed by the Akatsuki's presence looming over his existence as a Jinchuriki. But here, in this world, there was no such thing. While he doubted this world was without its own conflicts, at least they didn't involve him. Letting his mind wander, he turned and looked at Yasaka to see her gazing expectantly at him. He flashed her a smile before he spoke. I would like that very much, thank you. Yasaka clasped her hands together as a beautiful smile stretched onto her face. Great. I'll let the doctor know you're okay to leave. I will also send someone with some clothes that'll fit you. Thanking her once more, he watched as she turned around, her tails swiftly moving with her with such grace, and he could hear her footsteps as she left his room. Releasing a deep breath, Naruto let himself fall back into the bed he was laying in. He didn't get to enjoy it for long, however, as seconds after his head hit the pillow he was called into the familiar surroundings which belonged to his seal. Frowning, he stared up at the ceiling of the hallway he found himself in. A part of his body submerged in water, though he paid it no mind. Instead, he released an audible groan as he stood up before he began traversing through the ankle-deep water, his destination being the location he could sense the fox was at. It took a couple of seconds, but he finally arrived before the enormous golden cage that kept the Kyuubi at bay. Worry began to fill his mind the second his eyes laid prey on the deteriorating seal that kept it closed off before he shifted his attention to the pair of large crimson pupils that stared at him. Naruto, do you have any idea what you have done? The Kyuubi spoke as it growled at him. Naruto furrowed his brows before nodding hesitantly. Yes? I entered that weird crack that had formed when Kakashi was dealing with the explosion. Why? In response, the Kyuubi growled louder before sending out a wave of his malevolent chakra. Naruto stiffened in response before calming his mind to his best ability in order to counter the feeling of death that had assaulted him. Look down, foolish boy. The bijou screamed, and Naruto did what it said, only for his eyes to widen even more than when he had first laid his eyes on Yasaka. There, in the ankle-deep water and staring back at him, was his own reflection. Though there were several differences that warranted his reaction. The first thing he noticed was that his eyes changed from blue to deep purple and his pupils had thinned into slits. The second thing he noticed was that he seemed a bit taller, older, even as his face had gotten a tiny bit more angular. However, the main change that got most of his attention were the now 2 blonde fox ears on the top of his head, along with the 2 golden tails similar to Yasaka's own. What? His head shot up as he looked the massive bijou in the eye with an accusing gaze. What did you do to me? He yelled with a mixture of shock and wonder. The bijou scoffed. I didn't do a thing, boy. It was your own fault for jumping into that dimensional tear. Who does that? A fool, that is who. And now look what's happening. The large fox sniffed as it took a few steps forward, allowing Naruto to see the bijou in its entirety. Raising an eyebrow at what it was doing, his eyes traveled over the titanic form of the bijou. Then, his eyes widened as his gaze settled on the cause of the fox's torment. As there, swaying behind the bijou, were its tails. All 7 of them. What happened to your tails? Don't tell me. He quickly looked down at his reflection before back Kyuubi's tails. Yes. My beautiful tails. Gone. All because of you. Ah, but how? He sputtered as he looked at the bijou for answers. Traveling dimensions requires a strong body and life force, and while your Uzumaki blood helps, it's not enough by far. It took everything I had to keep you alive, which resulted in what's happening right now. To put it simply, boy, you are absorbing me. I don't know how that is possible, but it has to do something with the seal that accursed Yondaime used. The Kyuubi threw its head back as it roared in anger. How long? Naruto asked after a few tense moments of silence. How long until I absorb you, as you put it? The Kyuubi huffed before it lay down on its 2 hands. A few months, a year maybe. It depends on the rate you are assimilating my chakra and how much your body can hold, though it could be much longer. Naruto opened his mouth to ask another question, but was beaten to the punch as the bijou spoke first. You're wondering how that fox woman, Yasaka, didn't see your new appendages? Naruto's eyes widened slightly as the bijou was correct. Unlike your changed eyes and body, which I guarantee she didn't miss, you need to will your tails and ears into existence for them to show up. Naruto rose an eyebrow before he concentrated and felt something shift around his body. Turning his head, he watched in awe as behind him 2 golden tails were swaying, both appearing to be attached to his tailbone. Moving his hands up next, he cupped his fox ears, though was disappointed he couldn't feel actually any fur, something he wrote off as being due to not being in the real world. I see. Thank you for telling me this, Kyuubi. You don't seem so bad after all, though that might have something to do with the situation we are in. I will go back to the outside world for now. I will come and visit you, if you want. At least perhaps there's something in this world that can keep you alive. With that, Naruto turned around, missing the slight widening of the bijou's eyes at his words before it scoffed and closed. We'll see, Naruto, but perhaps you are the one the old man spoke about. Outside, Naruto opened his blue eyes before looking towards the nightstand next to the bed, where now a pair of clothes were laying. Kicking of the sheets covering his form, he slowly stepped out of bed, groaning along the way before stretching his arms above his head from not using them for a while. Grabbing the articles of clothing, Naruto unfolded them to see it was a black kimono, and with an orange obi that went along with it. He wondered if it was coincidence that they went with orange or not. While the kimono didn't look like anything special, just the feel of it made Naruto quickly realize that it was of very high quality, much like those kimonos he would often see nobles walk around with. Securing the obi, he grabbed the next piece of clothing, which revealed to be black yukata, matching nicely with the kimono he wore. Glancing down, he spotted a pair of sandals quite unlike shinobi sandals. These were much more casual, and put them on. Rolling his shoulders once and satisfied with how the clothes felt, he exited the room he had occupied, only to almost walk straight into an older-looking male who bowed his head slightly towards him upon noticing him. Uzumaki Naruto? The old man spoke quietly, and he quickly nodded his head. Yes? Follow me, please. Yasaka ordered me to lead you to her, as she has to discuss several things with you, including where you will be staying during your time here. All right, lead the way, he said with a nod of his head. He indeed had nowhere to stay, especially given that this was a completely new world or dimension, though he was unsure what the difference between the two were. So with that in mind, he silently followed the older man outside. Boom. Sigh. Boom. Breath in. Breath out. Boom. Smack. Yasaka released a deep breath as her hand impacted the desk she was sitting behind. Even now she could feel the aftershock reaching her all the way inside her office. She had given Naruto a location to train after he requested one, as he couldn't train in the city without causing panic. It was an area she would often use herself whenever she wished to blow off some steam but already regretted her decision. Seriously. What was he doing that she could feel it from all the way over here? Even whenever she was there, never had she received any reports that tremors and or noise could even be felt from this distance. Unless, of course, they were afraid of her and lied, but that's another story. Slowly her expression of annoyance shifted into a small smile as she thought of the blonde that she had found in her territory and wounded. It had been 2 months since that day, and she honestly had to say that she enjoyed his company. He was so different from the usual people she interacted with. He didn't stare at her like she was some object, like a prize or a piece of meat she had seen other men stare at her. While yes, she had caught him checking her out more than once, but when she would point it out, he would just tell her that he found her beautiful, and that she couldn't really blame him for that. It was so refreshing. It amazed her as well how easy he could say things like complimenting her on her beauty, as if he were talking about the weather. It was like he was oblivious to the effect his words had on her, not even noticing the flustered state he'd put her in every time. Boom! Eyebrow twitching, Yasaka pushed her chair back before standing up as another, this time louder explosion was heard. Sorry Naruto-kun, but enough is enough. I already have a hard time covering up why Kyoto has been experiencing several earthquakes the past few weeks, and I doubt they'll believe me for much longer. Yasaka mumbled to herself as she moved to put on her white haori on top of her traditional Miko outfit. Giving herself a once-over, Yasaka exited her office and made her way to stop a certain blonde from causing more panic to spread. Hey, that was amazing! Naruto exclaimed with childlike glee as he stared at the destruction caused by his previous attack, even as he was out of breath having to exert himself this much. His blue eyes were inspecting the several dozen feet craters that had scarred the previously flat surface he was standing on. Trees had been blown away by the aftershock created with each explosion, and due to the pressure, not capable of traveling freely with how the mountains were surrounding the area he was currently in. Not bad for your first attempt. Though you should compress it more before firing it to concentrate the damage more. Naruto heard the Bija speak to him from within. More? Yes, those craters are child's play compared to the real deal. Even Shikaku can do better than you at the moment. Naruto's eye twitched at the comment, feeling surprisingly offended as the pair of fox ears on top of head joined in. Asshole fox, he muttered before going back over inspecting the results of using a Bijadama. Well, multiple in this instance. Taking a deep breath, he held his hands outstretched in front of him before focusing intently on maintaining the correct ratio required to complete the technique. Slowly but surely a small black-colored ball of pure chakra began to form in front of his hands. Concentrating on it, Naruto began to slowly feed it more chakra while keeping an eye out to make sure it wasn't going to explode in front of him. As it grew to a size that it was as big as he himself, he slowly began to compress the ball of pure chakra. Cracks began to form on the ground beneath his feet as it grew smaller but kept the same volume. A drop of sweat ran down the side of his face as the ball of pure chakra was now the size of his own head. Just a bit more and then... Naruto, when are you going to mate with that Yasaka woman? The sudden question came out of nowhere and caught him off guard. So shocked by the question, he let the Bijadama fly as it traveled at insane speeds past the training grounds and instead impacted one of the mountains surrounding it. Boom! An enormous explosion followed as Naruto spit out all kinds of profanities to the Bijou inside of him, as not only did he lose his concentration, he missed the training grounds completely with that attack. As the explosion died down, Naruto could see the result of the attack as a massive crater was now visible on the side of the mountain. How was he going to explain this to Yasaka? That was impressive. Despite the end result not being what he wanted, Naruto couldn't help but agree. The crater was many times larger than any previous attempts he had. Wait. Slowly Naruto turned around before promptly paling to the point his skin color matched that of snow. There, standing not too far from him, was Yasaka in her usual glory, and she did not look happy one bit. Hello Yasaka. He chuckled nervously as he quickly looked away the moment their eyes met. Hello to you as well, Naruto-kun. I see you've been busy. Her eyes glanced over the numerous craters the training area held before coming to rest on the large crater his last attack had caused. Naruto flinched slightly as his ears on top of his head flattened as the 3 kitsune tails behind him slumped down. Yasaka had kept herself from squealing at the scene as she was supposed to reprimand him. Her own tails swaying dangerously behind her as she slowly walked towards him. Each step made him tense up slightly until she was standing in front of him. She took her time to look him over, getting a good glance of his appearance with the kitsune features visible. He honestly didn't look bad. In fact, if anything, it seemed to suit him very well, especially the ears that peeked out between his spiky hair. Looking at him now reminded her the first time she had seen him with his tails and ears out. Flashback. Interesting, Naruto said as he looked at himself in the mirror. Currently he was clad only in black shorts, his fox ears and two tails visible with the latter flowing freely behind him. You know, I'm surprised myself how well I'm adapting to this. He commanded one of his tails to curl in front of him and ran his hands through the blonde fur it held. Holy shit! This feels amazing. He began to comb his fingers through the fur before switching out one tail for the other. Humph. Of course it does, though you will quickly get used to it. Does that blonde know you're turning into a yokai? Naruto shook his head. No, I haven't. I'm not sure how to bring that up, you know. Like, oh, by the way, Yasaka? Yeah, I have a nine-tailed fox sealed inside of me from birth, but due to how wounded I was when I arrived, I'm slowly absorbing him. That will only bring up more questions, and I'm not sure if I'm ready for that, he said with a frown. Foolish boy. Stop with that excuse. You are afraid she will think different of you, but you are forgetting something. She's a yokai herself. The Bijou yelled at him like he was stupid. If this was back in Konoha, I would agree that you should keep to yourself, but we aren't. Didn't she tell you that Kyoto was a city home to most of the yokai this world has? Or did you forget that talk you two had weeks ago? Naruto blinked as he processed the Bijou's words before realizing that it was indeed correct. Once he was out of the hospital, the older male had led him to Yasaka's office where the two had a long conversation about how he exactly ended up here. Naruto had simply told her the truth, as said he came from a different world, one where humans were capable of using chakra in ways Yasaka had never even thought of. He told her the humans in his world were shinobi and used chakra for all kinds of things such as jutsu. When asked for a demonstration, Naruto had shrugged his shoulders before he held his hand out as a Rasengan formed in seconds. Something that surprised himself, as usually he needed a shadow clone to do so, and especially since he had noticed his own reserves had grown immensely due to the acquisition of two of Kyuubi's tails. Though he didn't question it, and let Yasaka marvel at the swirling ball of pure chakra in his hand. He then told her how he was on a mission, having explained that missions were what shinobis did as a living, and that during one of the missions a tear in their dimension had formed. Had he not sacrificed himself by entering it, his whole team would have ended up dead, as he was only capable of surviving due to his enhanced healing factor. And even then it was a close call. While it sounded all like one big, made-up lie to Yasaka, the evidence was right there, as she had seen it herself. Even the chakra he used was slightly different of yokai, as his was much more potent yet free-flowing at the same time. He also told her that there were no such thing as yokai where he was from, keeping the knowledge of bijous to himself, as that was of no concern to her. Once he was done explaining and Yasaka was satisfied, it was her turn, as she gave him a basic rundown of the history the world had. From the different factions that existed aside from yokai and who their leaders were, to the existence of actual gods that were living. Throughout her explanation, Naruto was wide-eyed. She even showed him a map of the world that was absolutely massive compared to the single continent the elemental nations had. As she finished up on informing him, it had started to get dark, and to his surprise Yasaka offered him to stay in one of the guest rooms in her home. While initially denying her offer, he eventually accepted after realizing she wasn't going to take no for an answer. What surprised him even more was that she would often, whenever she had free time, visit him, answering any question he had, which were quite a lot, as Yasaka had given him access to the library that Kyoto had. He had probably read more in a single week here than he had in his life. And so days would pass quickly with himself reading up on the history of the world and the supernatural, while spending time with Yasaka whenever she would come and visit him. You're right, I guess I'm still not completely used to this despite how nice she's been since I've been here. She also deserves to know, especially if in some time I'll end up as a Kyuubi yokai much like her. Though I only gained an extra tail in 3 months. Good, finally thinking with your brain, are you, brat? As for your tails, due to starting with 2 tails instead of 1, it takes longer for your body to get used to the extra chakra you suddenly gained. Which is why even with you training for days and throwing jutsu around, it will take longer for a third one to appear. I see, he mumbled as he returned his attention to his new appendages. Perhaps once I tell her she can help me out, as I have some cool ideas what I can do with these. Suddenly, without a warning, the door belonging to the room he was in was opened as Yasaka walked in. Naruto-kun, here are some of the books you. Yasaka halted her speech mid-sentence, as she looked wide-eyed at the new appearance of her guest. He looked mostly the same with the exception for 2 things. The first being the pair of blonde bushy tails that had frozen in the air behind him, the second being the fox ears she could see peeking out between his messy blonde locks. I was planning on telling you, he said, but he didn't sound convincing at all as the ears on top of his head flattened in resignation. Very well, was all Yasaka said as one of her tails moved to close the door. The accusing glare she sent him didn't help him feel better whatsoever. On top of his current situation, he could hear the Bijou laughing at his misfortune and quickly cut the link before focusing on the blonde vixen making his way towards him with a dark aura surrounding her. Flashback end. In the end, he had come clean completely. She suppressed a smirk at the memory of how quickly she got him to talk. It seemed like she still had it in her. It was interesting, though, hearing him explain the practices of their people. Though she also found it barbaric, to seal a yukai into a child who would grow up into a weapon. A brief frown crossed her face as she remembered him talk about his childhood. She didn't like how his blue eyes had dimmed as he told her his experience growing up in loneliness. How he grew up in a place that loathed his existence. She wasn't sure if she would be able to handle it were she in his shoes. Getting back to the matter at hand, though, her earlier anger had dissipated as she watched how sad he looked. His ears and tails having a big role in the part, and she sighed. I can't get angry at you like this. Naruto-kun, his mood did a quick 180 as his tails and ears regained their life and he flashed her a smile. That doesn't mean I will let you go scot-free, though. And he promptly lost his smile. No training here until I say so, okay? Receiving no reply, she repeated her words. I said, no training until I say so, okay? She got a quick nod from him in return. Good. Sorry, Naruto-kun, but I have a hard time dealing with the tremors you are causing from that weird attack you're launching. Not to mention the crater that you caused not even a minute ago. Alright, I understand. Naruto conceded as he knew he would lose should he fight her. She smiled before clasping her hands together. Great. Now let's head back so I can decide your punishment. She turned around as one of her tails reached for his before intertwining with it and began to walk. Due to her walking just a bit in front of her, she was unable to see the blush he sported nor the shiver that went down his spine from the feel, all while grumbling something incoherently to the Bijou inside of him. I'm not going to have sex with her, he yelled just as they were about to leave the area. His sudden outburst caused Yasaka to stop and made him bump into her, as his blush deepened several shades darker upon realizing he said that out loud. Fighting down her own blush that had formed on her cheeks, Yasaka shook her head before continuing to lead them away from the area. She would send some yukai out later to fix it up to the best of their abilities, as for now she continued their walk while doing her best to ignore the suggestive images that invaded her mind from his outburst. 2 months. That was how long Naruto had been gone ever since the rescue attempt of the Kazekage happened, and so far no one had come any closer to finding out where Naruto was. She had informed Jiraiya of what happened, and the man had wasted no time reverse summoning himself to the toads, and see if they had any idea how to get him back. They had already tried reverse summoning him there, but it didn't work. Either it was impossible, or it required an amount of chakra that nobody had. Though Jiraiya had also reported that the Akatsuki was aware of what happened, though continued the search for other Jinchuriki. Supposedly they were looking for ways to reach him, as well as without him they couldn't continue. It was the only good thing that came out of the event, as they were pushing the Akatsuki back for whatever their goal was. The only thing was that they knew it was bad if it required all the Bijou. Tsunade had informed the rest of his friends what happened and that Naruto was missing. Missing, not dead. Regardless, though Hinata had taken the news the worst, as the girl had burst into tears upon hearing her crush was gone. There was a chance she would never be able to tell him how she felt, and had locked herself inside the Hyuga compound ever since, only coming out when her team was training. Sighing softly, Tsunade stared at the wall to her left, more precisely the portrait belonging to the 4th Hokage. If Naruto would ever return, she swore to herself she would tell him who his parents were. Initially her sensei, Sarutobi Hiruzen, kept it away out of fear of other villages knowing the 4th Hokage had a son until he got older. Now that he indeed was older, he never got to it, having sacrificed himself during the invasion 3 years ago. It was a foolish decision in her opinion, as a lot of Naruto's childhood could have been fixed had he not hid the boy's heritage. But alas, it had happened, and there was nothing she could do aside from attempting to fix it should he return to them. Jiraiya, any news? Tsunade asked upon sensing the chakra signature belonging to her teammate entering her office. Materializing into existence before her, she saw the man nod his head. Indeed, I have Haim, but it's not about Naruto. Tsunade frowned at that before motioning for him to continue. The Akatsuki have 4 Bijus so far. My contact in IWA said they saw 2 men fighting against the Jinchuriki of the Yambi. Both males, with one having long dark hair and the other resembling a shark. I take it you know who these 2 are? Tsunade nodded her head. Of course she did, as there were only 2 people in that organization with those features. One being Uchiha Itachi and the latter Hashigaki Kisame. And what is Iwa's response to the capture of their Jinchuriki? Jiraiya shrugged his shoulders. So far? Nothing. It seems Inoki is letting them take go without attempting to retrieve them. A slight scowl marred Jiraiya's face as he spoke. Tsunade scoffed. Of course Inoki would let them. If I recall correct, he has used them before, right? The Akatsuki? Indeed he has, several times even. He probably knows if he attempts anything he won't be able to use them again, or that retrieving their Jinchuriki is useless. Tsunade shook her head. I guess he's also keeping the news inside IWA out of fear other villages may attempt something. Her words were met with a nod from the white-haired man in her office. Very well. You're free to leave. Alright, by the way, where was it that they had fought Deidara? River Country? Yes, why? I'm heading out there in a couple of days to see if there's anything that can give me a hint of where Naruto could be. Tsunade thought about it before nodding in agreement before her eyes lit up as she remembered something. Before you go, I can tell you that we found some interesting items when searching through the Gaki's apartment. She opened a drawer before retrieving a small book and handing it over to Jiraiya, who opened it and looked through it. It belongs to Naruto. It has all kinds of information in it, ranging from jutsus to stories about his childhood. Before you read it, I warn you that some of the things are less than pleasant. Jiraiya closed the book before looking back at her. Less than pleasant? Though we now know where he got those wind jutsus from. Question is, when and where did he learn them? Tsunade shrugged her shoulders as she didn't know either. Not sure, but I can safely say that it was during the trip you two had. My guess is that the Gaki managed to discover the secret behind the shadow clones and had them learn while the real one was with you. As for the warning, let's just say that Sensei screwed up more than I at first thought. I see. He mumbled as he gave the small book another look over. Well, I'll look it through when I'm heading towards River Country. With that said, a cloud of smoke enveloped the Toad Sage as he was gone. Tsunade turned around in her chair till she was facing the window, a frown marring her face as she gazed down upon the village. Come back soon, Naruto. Walking through the hallways of her own home, Yasaka entered the living room only for her eyebrows to rise as she saw Naruto was also there, sitting on the couch, his eyes glued to the television. A small smile graced her face as she noticed he was completely immersed into whatever he was currently watching, to the point he wasn't aware her eyes were on him. Chuckling softly to herself, her gaze shifted to the side where a clock was hanging. 10:42 p.m., it read, making her frown slightly for having worked till late in the evening. Deciding she would spend some time with him before she was going to bed, she silently walked over to the couch he was sitting. Once she got close enough, she plopped herself down next to him, a mischievous smile adorning her face as she saw him jump a little. Ah! Yasaka-chan! Naruto yelped as he sent her a playful glare, which she responded by widening her smile. Sorry Naruto-kun, but I couldn't help myself. You seemed so invested with the TV you didn't even sense my presence. Naruto grumbled a bit before he shook his head. It's fine, Yasaka-chan, it was my own fault anyway. He leaned back into the couch before stiffening as Yasaka rested her head on his shoulder. He glanced at her from the corner of his eye to see her join in on the movie he was watching. So they don't have things like these where you are from? He heard her ask, clearly indicating the television. Naruto breathed in her scent as he found himself growing more comfortable with her next to him. We do, but those are really outdated compared to this one. It's also only used by daimyos or important figures, and we have nothing like the stuff they are showing on television here. Yasaka hummed as she shifted her body in a more comfortable position. She was now resting her body weight against him, though her head was still resting on his kimono-clad shoulder. Say, Yasaka, if you have some free time soon, you think you can help me with some training? I promise it's nothing destructive like earlier today. Does it have to be me? He nodded. Yeah, it has to do with certain kitsune abilities. I guess I can free up some time for you. Can you explain what exactly you need help with? She felt him nod. Sure, I need help with controlling my foxfire. I was able to conjure up the flames, but after a few seconds they disappear. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong despite my attempts. Yasaka could clearly hear the frustration in his voice as he told her. I think you know what you're doing wrong. But don't worry, I'll free up some space in my schedule just for you, she said, getting a small blush from her fellow kitsune yukai. Anything else? Yup, I have all kinds of crazy ideas for attack, however they all involve my tails. Unfortunately, I'm not really good when it comes to controlling them, as you might know. I can somewhat move them around, but I can't really grab anything with them. It's not funny, he whined upon hearing her laugh. I'm sorry, but it kind of is, she replied between giggles. Naruto clicked his tongue before focusing back on the movie he was watching before Yasaka's arrival. Seeing he wasn't going to retort, Yasaka joined in while keeping quiet. Yawn, that was more interesting than I thought, Yasaka drawled once the movie was over. Removing her head from his shoulder, she straightened herself while stretching her arms. I'm going to bed. Good night, Naruto-kun, see you in the morning. She leaned over and he froze as he felt her lips touch his cheek. Without any further ado, Yasaka stood up before shuffling out of the living room. Meanwhile, Naruto still sat on the couch, frozen as his mind went over what just happened. Slowly his eye began to twitch as he was assaulted by the laughter of the bijou inside of him. Bahaha. Didn't expect that, didn't you, Gaki? Ha! Shut up! He yelled at the massive entity, who quieted down to mere snickering. I mean what just happened. Seems like someone is interested in you, Naruto. Question is, what are you going to do? Naruto racked his brain at the question the bijou presented him. What was he going to do? While he would admit he liked Yasaka, after all, what was there not to like about her? She was beautiful, strong, and a kitsune yukai much like him. She has been nothing but kind from the moment he had arrived here, and more helpful than anyone in his life had been before. The problem, however, lay with the fact that he had only known her for 2 months. He wasn't sure if that was enough to get a good idea of what kind of person Yasaka was. At the moment she was a loving, caring, and strong woman, but was that all that there was to her? He didn't know. He was also much younger than she was. By how much he didn't know, though. With the apparent lifespan yukai had, that wasn't really anything bad. Shinobi back home regularly hooked up with those older than them, and that was okay. Yes, his lifespan, due to it, he knew he could never get into a relationship with any woman back home, as he would outlive them, and he wasn't sure if he could handle that. Though, the last time he checked, he wasn't sure someone was even interested in him in the first place. The crush he used to have on Sakura had completely disappeared during his travels with Jiraiya, and he was able to look back how she treated him. And now he had to deal with Yasaka, though he was still not completely sure of her feelings towards him. He would give it some more time, there was no need to hurry. He doubted there was a possible way home, and even if it did, he had all the time in the world. Yasaka watched as the door leading to her office was opened and Naruto entered carrying a stack of papers. She allowed herself a small smile as he made his way over to her. Anything to get a break from the boring office work she was busy doing was worth it to her. Morning, Yasaka-chan. Naruto happily greeted the blonde kitsune before placing the stack of papers on her desk. Someone asked me if I could bring these to you, and I thought, why not? Yasaka looked at the papers he dropped off before sighing softly as she read what they were for. Thank you, Naruto-kun. She spoke softly as she looked at her fellow blonde, who had his yukai features free to see as his tails swayed softly back and forth. No problem, I have nothing to do myself, and since I can't train, I figured I might as well spend some time here with you. He scratched his cheek before sitting down on the empty chair that was situated in front of her desk. Paperwork, huh? He mumbled as he spared the papers a couple glances. Yasaka nodded her head as she understood where he was coming from. Correct, it's some of the less enjoyable parts that come with the job. He watched as she stamped a couple of papers before neatly placing them in a separate folder. Oh, watch! Hearing him, Yasaka looked up and saw him hold his hand out. Before she could question him on what he was doing, a small yet dense blue flame flickered in existence in the palm of his hand. I managed to get the basics down yesterday but forgot to tell you about it. Thank you though, as I doubt I could have done it without you. He flashed her a bright smile. A slight flush dusted her cheeks at his words. He had been the first person she had personally taught, and initially was somewhat afraid she wouldn't make a good teacher. But now, seeing him performing the first step of Kitsune Bai, a standard attack any Kitsune yukai was capable of, and hearing him express his gratitude felt really nice. Hey brat, aren't you going to ask her? Naruto felt his eye twitch as he listened to Kyubi talk to him before focusing back to Yasaka, and saw she had returned to stamping papers. I will, just give me a bit, okay? He heard the bijou scoff and rolled his eyes before trying to calm his nerves. Damn, he never felt as nervous before, not even during the Chunin exams when he was fighting Niji, as he looked down and could see his hands trembling slightly. He closed his eyes as he took a few calming breaths to ease his nerves before his eyes opened. Say, Yasaka. HM? She looked up to see him fidget a bit in his seat, which was surprising as he usually had this confident aura surrounding him. Do you perhaps want to go with me tonight? He quickly finished as he averted his eyes. Still looking at him, Yasaka blinked once, then twice as finally his words hit her. Naruto slowly moved his eyes back to Yasaka, who had been silent the moment he finished speaking, and watched as slowly a beautiful smile formed on her face before their eyes met. Naruto could hear his heart beat loudly inside of his chest. He was surprised Yasaka hadn't noticed. Are you asking me out? Her voice was soft, like silk, as it reached his ears, and he felt a shiver run down his spine. Why, yes? If you want to, that is, if possible. Her smile got even brighter as her presence made itself known as a warmth washed over him. Flashing him a smile, she answered. I would love to. And Naruto beamed. Think this looks good enough, Naruto said as he stood in front of a mirror and ran a hand through his ever so faithfully spiky blonde locks. Honestly, Naruto wondered if it was even possible for him to change hairstyles, as whatever he tried his hair would always regain its spikiness. It didn't matter if he just came out of the shower or not, as with a simple sweep of his hand it was back the way it was, like it never changed at all. He moved his hands downwards and adjusted the high-collar kimono he had bought earlier today. It was white with small yellow suns adorned just below the collar. It was held together by a black sash. He didn't wear anything underneath it, allowing his neck and a bit of his chest to be seen. Damn, I look good, he mumbled as he gave himself another look over. He was surprised himself just how much a change of clothes would do for his appearance, but now that he actually paid attention, he just appeared much more mature. Satisfied with how he looked, he turned around and exited his room, only for his eyes to widen as he laid his eyes on Yasaka, who was standing on the opposite side. Naruto allowed his eyes to travel over her form as Yasaka was clad in a beautiful red and white kimono that hugged her body quite nicely, as he could see the curves she had with a single glance. Small foxes adorned the sleeves of her kimono that was held together by a fitting red sash. Moving upwards, her golden blonde hair was pulled in a beautiful braid with a few strands framing the side of her face as her expression held a kind smile. All in all, she was the epitome of beauty to him. You look amazing, Naruto breathed out as he finally rested his gaze on her eyes. Yasaka laughed softly. You look handsome as well, Naruto-kun. Her words elicited a blush out of him, as he wasn't used to receiving compliments at all. Shaking his head lightly, he held his arm out for her to take, which she did as she intertwined it with her own before the two made their way to the front door. As the two walked through the streets of Kyoto, Naruto couldn't help but smile as he glanced at his date from the corner of his eye. Yasaka was holding his arm with her own while leaning against him as he led her to a restaurant he had put a reservation in. Yasaka hummed softly as she allowed Naruto to lead her through the busy streets. She took in the looks of surprise from several yokai whom recognized her, though she paid them no mind. No, Yasaka was feeling excited and was very much looking forward to this date she was having with her fellow kitsune yokai. Despite herself being older than him by quite a bit, she had no issue with age, as she could live for quite a while, and she assumed he didn't either, or else he wouldn't have bothered asking her out. Moving her head a bit, she gazed up and saw the smile he wore, and she increased the hold she had on his arm. Even though she only knew him for a little over 2 months, she truly had come to like him. She had spent almost all of her time with him during his stay, and slowly her feelings had changed from friends to a potential mate. She had tested the water, so to speak, by kissing him on the cheek a little over a week ago when they had watched a movie together. It was just a simple kiss on the cheek to see what his reaction to it was going to be, and she was secretly pleased that it had led him asking her out. Here we are. His voice brought her back to reality as they stood outside a small restaurant. She recognized it as one of the more expansive ones Kyoto has to offer, and actually wondered how he managed to get a reservation in, as last time she heard it was completely booked for at least a few months in advance. As if sensing her thoughts, Naruto smirked before leading her inside. Upon entering, Yasaka let her eyes travel the inside of the restaurant after realizing she had never been here before. While Yasaka was looking around, Naruto watched as a young woman made her way towards them. He saw her looking at him with a light blush on her cheeks before her eyes widened as she recognized the person holding his arm. The young woman swallowed once before addressing the blonde male. Reservation? Naruto nodded his head. Yes, it should be under Uzumaki, a table for 2. The woman's eyes lit up with recognition. Ah, you're the one the owner told me to look out for. Very well, follow me then. Naruto lightly nudged Yasaka, getting her attention before motioning her to follow after the woman, walking a few steps in front of them. She led the pair to one of the corners of the restaurant where preparations for 2 had been made. Remembering some dating etiquette he had read earlier this week, Naruto moved up in front and pulled the chair back for her to sit on, and receiving a thank you in response. He then pushed it closer to the table now that Yasaka was seated before sitting himself down on the opposite side of her. This is quite nice, she mumbled before resting her gaze on her date. Naruto smiled. Glad you like it. They were interrupted as the same woman from before walked up to their table carrying 2 menus, which she handed out to either of them. I'd like a small plate of sushi to start things off, Naruto told the waitress, who waited patiently and wrote down the order before looking at Yasaka. Humming softly as she looked the menu over, she decided to order the same as he did, as it made for a great appetizer. Would you like something to drink while waiting? Yes, Naruto nodded. We'd like a bottle of Jinjoshu for 2, please. Yasaka sent him a small smile at the mention of her favorite sake, which he returned. He was thankful that the changes that had happened to his body made him look a bit older than he did before, or else there was no way he'd be able to get away with ordering alcohol like that. It would also look weird to see Yasaka, Kyoto's leader, walk arm in arm with a 16-year-old. Mainly to humans, at least, as yokai were largely unconcerned with age as long as the other wasn't a young child, of course. Though him being a kitsune yokai and eventually ending up as a kyubi himself might have resulted in some biased answers he had received. Soon the waitress returned carrying a tray holding 2 small cups with the requested bottle of sake next to them. They thanked the woman who left as Yasaka filled both their cups. They clashed their small cups before they both downed it in a single take. Soon thereafter their food was served. Throughout the evening Naruto kept Yasaka entertained as he retold her several stories regarding missions he had gone on when he was younger. From saving countries to rescuing princesses, nothing was out of the ordinary for what he had experienced. Soft giggling could be from Yasaka as she and Naruto left the restaurant. It had gotten dark outside as stars twinkled in the night sky. Regardless of that though, plenty of people could still be seen outside and Naruto wasn't ready to call it a night yet. He grabbed Yasaka's hand and pulled her close as she was a tad bit tipsy from the amount of sake she had consumed. Thankfully, Naruto still had the bijou inside of him who was capable of filtering the worst effects of the amount of alcohol he drank. He softly tugged on Yasaka's hand, causing her to collide against him as if she weighed nothing. "Ma, what's the matter?" Naruto suppressed a shiver threatening to appear as he felt her breath come in contact with his neck. Shaking his head to get rid of any perverse thoughts, he moved so that she was standing at his side and allowed one of his arms to curl around her and rest on her hip. Yasaka didn't seem to mind as she moved herself a bit closer to him, her head coming to rest on his shoulder. Giving her a glance and seeing she was pleased by the closeness between the two, they began to walk. Earlier today Naruto had mapped out a decently sized path that started from the restaurant they had just left back to Yasaka's home, which involved one of the more pretty-looking parks Kyoto had. It was also the perfect weather as moonlight shone down on them between the branches above them, giving the forest an ethereal beauty that seemed to be out of this world. As they walked they saw all kinds of animals scurrying around them. Yasaka cooed softly as a small family of foxes walked past them. They spared them a glance before one of them nipped at Yasaka's ankles before running along with the other two quickly following behind. Tempting his luck, Naruto moved the hand that rested on her hip downwards until it made contact with her shapely behind. "Nice going, brat." He heard the bijou cheer him on from inside of him. It was the first time he had heard from him since the evening. Naruto cautiously looked at Yasaka's face to see if he had overstepped his boundaries. He was once again surprised as he spotted the small smile she wore, making it evident that she knew what he was doing but didn't put any effort in stopping him. "I think I have a dead wish," Naruto internally mused as he gave her ass a soft squeeze. "Ah, Naruto, be careful what you're wishing for," she mumbled. They had stopped walking as Yasaka had buried her face against his neck, her words sending pleasurable sensations down his spine as his free hand came up and started combing through parts of her hair that wasn't constricted by her braid. "Oh? And what might that be?" he teasingly asked as the hand he had running through her hair moved away as he cupped her cheek, his eyes taking every little detail her face held before coming to rest on her pink, supple and kissable lips. Looking up, her golden eyes met his blue ones, which stared right back at her. Due to the close proximity, she could feel his heart thump in his chest, which wasn't much different of her own erratic heartbeat. "Seek and I," she barely heard him whisper as she felt his fingers trace circles on her cheek. Smiling softly, her own hands moved up, wrapping around his neck and slowly bringing his face down to meet hers. A soft, almost unnoticeable moan escaped Yasaka as her lips made contact with his as her eyes fluttered close. Naruto's own eyes widened at Yasaka's straightforward action before they too closed slowly. He could hear the bijou inside of him yelling all kinds of praises but paid him no mind. No, his attention was solely on the beautiful woman he was holding and in a lip lock with. He felt an overwhelming amount of emotions racing through him the longer their lips were locked together, and unconsciously pressed her a bit closer to himself. This kiss was much better than the accidental one he had with Sasuke back in the academy, one he would rather forget. The fact that it was with this bombshell of a vixen who held unparalleled beauty made it even better. Yes, to Naruto this was his first official kiss. Eventually, and much to both their displeasure, the need to breathe arose and their lips disconnected from each other. Nevertheless, Yasaka and Naruto rested their foreheads against each other, both panting lightly as a small blush adorned both their cheeks. "That was amazing," Naruto breathed out softly after regaining his breath. Yasaka nodded her head in agreement, unable to find the proper words to describe the euphoria that had washed over her the moment their lips met. More. Yasaka wanted more, to feel no taste his lips once more. And so she did. Naruto was surprised as the hands resting on the back of his neck tugged him downwards, his lips smashing against Yasaka's own once more, thought this time with much more force. The blonde vixen stood on the tip of her toes as she successfully managed to snatch his lips up once again. Deciding to change things up a bit, she prodded his lips with her tongue, earning an audible gasp from the younger blonde who parted his lips. She used the opportunity and slipped her tongue inside and smirked inwardly, and the pleased groans he was releasing as she explored his oral cavity. A minute later and Yasaka was the one to break the kiss, a thin strand of saliva connecting their mouths together, and leaving behind a slightly dazed Naruto. "You know, I've been wanting to do this for quite a while," she said after a moment of basking in silence, the only sounds being from the leaves that rustled from the wind. Naruto snapped out of his dazed state as he realized just what had happened. His own tongue traced over his now moist lips before leaning down and pressed his lips against the side of her head, making her hum. Leaning his head back, he began to chuckle, earning him a confused look from Yasaka. From all the things I expected that would happen since I arrived here, I can safely say that this isn't one of them." Hearing his words, Yasaka let out a chuckle of her own before resting her head against his chest. "I don't see you complaining." "Why would I? I feel happier than I ever been. Yes, the fact that I'm slowly turning into a yokai was quite something to handle when I first received the news. But when I laid my eyes on you, with your features free for me to see, I knew it wasn't as bad as it could have been. And now here I am, embracing the same beautiful woman who had helped me out the most and reciprocates these feelings I have for you." He sighed softly as his hands ran up and down her back. "I don't think I could be any happier than I am now, really." They stayed like this for a moment, neither knowing how long exactly before Yasaka removed herself out of his grasp, though she kept their hands connected. "Let's head home. It's been a long evening and we can discuss our new relationship tomorrow." Naruto nodded his head in agreement to her words as he wordlessly began to walk. This has been one of the better, if not outright best day in his short life, and he couldn't help but look forward to what the future had to offer. "Any news on the Kyuubi Jinchuriki?" A deep male voice spoke up from his left. Ringed eyes zeroed in on the owner of the voice, a single Sharingan eye meeting his own gaze from behind the orange mask he wore. No. Even Zetsu had been unable to find any trace of the boy. "Madara-sama, what if the reports are true? The ones that claim he had been swallowed up by a dimensional tear?" "Yes, what if?" Madara hummed as he scratched his mask. "If true, it's a very concerning matter. Though dimensional travel isn't new, shinobi in the past having devised techniques surrounding it. A good example would be Tobirama's Hiraishin, which was later perfected by the Yondaime Hokage himself, which involves the user entering a separate dimension to instantly travel to the Hiraishin tags. There was even evidence back during the warring era of dimension travel dating back as far as the time Rakuta Sennin was alive." Pain listened to Madara's words before he spoke. "So what is our next step? Without the Kyuubi we can't complete our goal." Madara crossed his arms. Keep collecting the beasts. I'll have Zetsu scout the nation. For all we know, this could be an elaborate ploy by Konoha to keep us away from their Jinchuriki. While you will be doing that, I'll look into the possibility of other dimensions myself. If worst comes to worst, we don't need the complete Kyuubi, and Zetsu reported that there's a boy holding enough of Kyuubi's chakra located at Hai no Kuni's fire temple. We can always grab him, as nobody would miss him." "Very well, I'll inform the others in the next meeting." The masked man calling himself Madara nodded before his body was sucked into his eye, leaving Pain behind. His purple ring pattern eyes gazed solemnly over Amigakure as it continuously rained. Soon, peace will become a reality. Rays of sunlight peering down from the large window belonging to the room he was in was the cause for Naruto's eyes to flutter open before closing quickly as it directly met his eyes. Moving his head slightly to the side, he tried again, and this time wasn't met with anything shining directly into his eyes. A soft feminine groan met his ears, and he quickly looked down only to meet a tuft of blonde hair accompanied by a pair of fox ears that twitched ever so slightly. His first reaction was for his eyes to widen before quickly calming down as he could feel that both were still wearing clothes, the same one as they wore yesterday evening to be more specific. I remember she didn't want to let go of me, so we ended up sleeping here, together." Naruto mused, much calmer than he himself had expected. Though, he moved some bangs to the side, watching as soft snores escaped her mouth. "She's really cute like this." Brat. Naruto. "Yes?" Naruto finally responded, aware of the Biju's twitching eye. "Well done, Naruto." Naruto flinched at the thunderous voice belonging to the Biju echoing his mind. "You've surprised me, boy. I never imagined you had it in you. I thought that by now you knew I'm not the same boy I was back then. I can act more like myself, no need putting up a mask of a loudmouthed idiot. His attention went to his sleeping companion who seemed to be waking up. Still, I can get used to this. Yasaka groaned as she slowly woke up, her body unconsciously moving closer to the source of warmth she was feeling. Pressing herself closer, her eyebrows furrowed as her ears picked up muffled groans before her eyes blinked open. Good morning, Yasaka-chan. She sleepily raised an eyebrow as her slitted golden eyes met cerulean blue ones before she quickly sat up after realizing she was in the same bed as him. Relief spread through her as she noticed both were still clothes in the same outfit they had worn the previous night. A smile of unbridled joy formed on her face as memories of last night flashed through her mind. While they were a couple, or at least more than just friends, she didn't want to consummate their relationship just yet. Sleeping in the same bed as him was fine, as she honestly enjoyed his presence so close to her, and she knew he wouldn't try anything she wasn't quite ready for. He just didn't seem like the type. Yawning, Yasaka stretched out her arms, unaware that she was now straddling him as he just looked on. Once done, she leaned down and pecked him on his lips, surprising him. Good morning, Naruto-kun. She rested her body on top of his, her tails swaying lazily behind her as he ran his hand up and down her back. Naruto took a deep breath, inhaling her scent and humming softly at how peaceful this moment was. Say, Naruto-kun? She propped herself up as she looked up. As much as I'd like to stay like this forever, I'm quite hungry, and I guess you are too. She saw him nod and continued. So how about I prepare us some breakfast before we're going to start the day? I'll be helping you with the next step of Kitsun Bai. Naruto's eyes lit up with interest in progressing with his foxfire, as he knew he had barely scratched the surface with that specific ability, and receiving personal training from Yasaka was more than anyone else got. She was the expert, and nobody could teach him better than her. He sat up and cupped both her cheeks before planting one last kiss on the blonde vixen's lips. I second that idea. Good. She got off of the bed and walked towards the door. Stopping right in front of it, she turned her head to see him staring at her behind and shook her head. Don't be late, or else I'll eat both our breakfast, she warned him before leaving the room. Staring at the now empty spot, Yasaka previously occupied, Naruto sighed blissfully before falling back onto the bed with a large smile etched on his face. That woman, she really is something else. GHRK. Spill escaped his mouth as once again a first impacted his stomach. Eyes threatened to roll into the back of his head, and he fought down the urge to vomit as he was hit harder than he had ever been in his life. As he fought to keep his consciousness, his body impacted the ground before continuing to skid across the grass for several feet. Naruto lay there for a moment as he slowly regained his breath, his eyes staring upwards at the clear blue sky. Come on, Naruto-kun, I know that wasn't enough to take you out. Naruto could only groan as he shifted his head to see Yasaka standing a couple feet away from him. Her blonde hair was pulled into a ponytail, while her outfit consisted of form-fitting track pants and a matching sports bra, which was quite distracting with the size of her chest. Thankfully, they were on one of her private training grounds, which meant only he was able to see her like this. Her ears and tails were free for him to see, as she was currently training him in the use of his own tails. It started off quite easy with him only allowed to block swat away her punches with his own tails. The minute her own tails came into play, though, along with the increase of her speed/ferocity, was when things spiraled down, as instead of blocking he had switched over to dodging as he saw the crater that appeared when one of her tails made impact with the ground. Yeah, Naruto was not looking forward to be on the receiving end of that more than absolutely necessary. From where she was standing, Yasaka watched, pleased as Naruto groggily got to his feet. The last blow she had hit him with was more than enough to knock out weaker yokai, and she was somewhat surprised to see him stand. Despite Naruto having only 3 tails, she had quickly sensed a big difference between him and herself. The potency of his chakra was much higher than her own, to the point that his 3-tailed state was more than capable of keeping up with 5-tailed Kitsune yokai. It was the reason she was quite rough on him, as he had also shown he had a high pain threshold. She was satisfied, however, with how his training progressed, as he seemed to be a very quick learner when it comes to practical stuff, that is, soaking up her training like a sponge did water, which made it a lot more enjoyable to teach him. Though a part of her also liked beating him around, as she could practically feel the potential he had in him. Alright, let's continue, came Naruto's voice as he shook his head to clear any remnants of dizziness. Yasaka didn't reply as she kept her eyes on him. Even now, as they stood, she could see his wounds already starting to disappear, though it didn't help getting rid of the fatigue he felt, which she used to her advantage as she bolted from her spot. Naruto barely had time to widen his eyes as he commanded one of his tails to move in front of him, as Yasaka seemingly teleported while sending a chakra-covered fist his way. He grunted softly as his tail absorbed the impact but could feel the force belonging to her fist as his hair fluttered in the wind generated by their contact. Narrowing his eyes at her, he lashed out with his other tails, which she swiftly blocked with her own. She did it with such practiced ease she was able to simultaneously block while sending two punched at him. He managed to block the first one, but the second punch bypassed his defense and hit him just below his right shoulder. Thankfully, he managed to move his body to lessen the damage, though it didn't stop him from wincing as he was sent skidding back half a feet. This was unreal. Yasaka's strength surpassed anyone he had fought before by insane amounts. Even when he was a younger and had first met Jiraiya the first time, did he not feel this outclassed against his opponent. Even Orochimaru in the Forest of Death wasn't compared to the beatdown he was receiving. It was a scary thought, as Naruto knew that Yasaka was far stronger than any person back in the elemental nations. Even now, with him having gained a large upgrade in the form of massively larger chakra pools and amplified strength capable of shattering boulders with ease, she still was able to block his attack with little to no issue. It was quite concerning, especially since she had told him there were beings alive that were massively stronger than she was. Devils were the first ones. She had told him each of the 4 Satans was capable of destroying Japan if they truly wished to do so. She had also told him what his power was compared to devils. It was higher than high-class devils, especially his speed, which, if he went all out, could even catch her off guard. He wasn't as strong as ultimate-class devils strength-wise yet, though. While his Bijudama could wipe small mountains off the map, he didn't really have any other attacks in that range. Yasaka herself was on the higher end of ultimate class if she were to go all out. Though she did tell him that if he would get his 7th or 8th tail, his power should match her own. He was knocked out of his thoughts, literally, as one of her tails smacked the side of his face and sending him rocketing to the side. His body came to stop as it impacted a tree, and he could feel his ribs crack from the force. The sound of footsteps nearing him gained his attention as he slowly managed to roll himself onto his back, wincing ever so slightly due to the pressure his ribs endured. A relieved sigh escaped his lips as he felt something warm envelop his damaged ribs. Turning to the source, he saw Yasaka, who had gotten to a Saiza position, while one of her hands was placed on the spot it hurt the most as she healed him. "Thank you?" he rasped as he could feel the pain disappear. Despite that, though, Naruto didn't move, opting to lie where he was underneath the shade provided by the tree Yasaka had sent him into. Naruto raised an eyebrow as a sudden weight joined him. He glanced downwards to see Yasaka laying next to him, or against him to be more precise. One of her arms sprawled across his chest, the shirt he wore nothing more than a couple tatters hanging together on some strands. Feeling something soft touch his cheek, he looked to the side, only to come face to face with one of her tails which kept on tapping his cheek. Understanding what she indirectly was asking, he raised his head, just enough so it could come to rest beneath his head. Like a pillow, a very, very soft pillow. He moved his own hand and began running it through her blonde tresses, which even now still looked as good as they did before the one-sided beatdown that she had delivered him. "Hey Naru," Yasaka began, her hand rubbing circles on his stomach as she heard him hum. "Do you have any family left back where you are from?" Naruto stopped his hands for a moment, making her wonder if the question was too personal before she felt him continue. "No, I'm an orphan. I don't even know who my parents are, though I have somewhat of an idea who my father is after having seen various pictures. Yet, when I asked the person who should know them, someone similar to a village leader, I was told he didn't know. The only thing I was told that they died the night when the Kyuubi had attacked Konoha." "I see. What about grandparents? Who raised you?" Naruto chuckled. I raised myself mostly. I was kicked out of the orphanage when I was 5, or was it 4? He mused to himself before he shook his head. "Anyway, shortly after I was kicked out, the Hokage, who I told you holds a similar position as yourself, gave me my own apartment." Looking back, I wondered what the man was thinking, letting a 4-year-old boy live inside an apartment all by himself. As he finished speaking, he felt Yasaka move. She twisted her body so she was now laying directly on top of him, her eyes peering into his own before leaning down as she captured his lips in between her own. "I'm sorry for bringing up bad memories," she spoke softly, her lips hovering just above his own. "It's fine, really," he flashed her a smile. "Over time I got used to it, the loneliness I endured during my childhood. I'm just glad I turned out alright after all that happened." "Me too." Yasaka giggled as he pulled her closer, their bodies smashed against another, not that she minded in the slightest. The two stayed in this position for an unspecified amount of time, either doing much aside from basking in the other's presence. It was rather interesting for Yasaka. She found herself acting more and more like a love-struck teenager the more time she spent with him. She even felt herself a lot less happy the longer she was away from him, leading the two to be seen together whenever the other had business to attend in parts of Kyoto. Ugh, Yasaka sighed in annoyance before she sat back up. Naruto looked at her, confused what caused the sudden change in her mood. We have to return to Kyoto, Naruto-kun. I have an appointment soon with one of the clans that I can't afford to miss. Ah. Naruto breathed as he propped himself up using his elbows. He watched as the blonde vixen stood up before walking a few feet to the side where two neatly folded kimonos could be seen laying on the ground, untouched by everything that had happened. With a small groan he stood up as well, watching as Yasaka put on the kimono to hide her appearance for eyes other than his before making her way over to him and handing the other kimono over. He accepted with a smile, putting it on and securing the obi to obscure the shirt he wore underneath. Yasaka held her arm out with a smile, waiting for him to lock his arm with hers. She didn't have to wait long as she felt him intertwine their arms. Moving a bit closer to him like she usually did, the two left the training ground as they headed towards Kyoto. Naruto hummed softly as he stared at the ceiling. It was night and he was currently in the bedroom, Yasaka's bedroom to be more precise. Laying on the bed, a bed that was really soft. Not in an uncomfortable way though. No, if anything it was more comfortable than anything he had felt in his life. Even the guest room Yasaka had offered him paled in comparison. His arms lie limply to his sides, his fingers trailing the covers beneath him, unbothered as his eyes stayed focused on the ceiling. It had been a little over a week since he had taken Yasaka out on a date, and subsequently had made out with the woman and ending up spending the night together in a non-sexual way. Yasaka had surprised him when the next day she had practically asked, more like ordered him to sleep with her in her room, again not in a perverse way. Just so that they could be close to the other, as apparently she too had slept better that night than she had before. He didn't decline, of course. He liked Yasaka and very much enjoyed the warmth her body generated when they were sleeping. Her being somewhat of a cuddler only helped. The bathroom door leading to the bedroom attached to the room clicked open, the sound reaching his ears as he turned and looked. His breath was caught in his throat as his eyes landed on the scene provided to him. There, standing at the foot of the bed wearing nothing but some very skimpy nightwear, was Yasaka. A light blush adorned her cheeks as she gazed at him with half-lidded eyes that made him feel more self-conscious than he already was. Naruto, she breathed out his name and Naruto had to swallow at how seductive it sounded. Why yes? Naruto asked as he did his best to maintain eye contact, something that was a lot harder than he thought it'd be as his eyes unconsciously kept moving downwards. He could feel himself heating up as by now he was sitting straight up with his back against the headboard. He moved around the shorts he was wearing as he had rising matters to deal with. He swallowed audibly once more as Yasaka knelt on her bed, her golden blonde hair flowing behind her. He tried to back up, an action that proved futile as she crawled over to him and successfully straddled him legs. Up close he was able to see she seemed as nervous about this as he was, something that made him feel strangely comfortable before she took one of his hands and placed it above her where her heart was located. Can you feel it? She whispered throatily. He nodded. He could feel her heartbeat, it having a pace similar to his own. Even now as his blue eyes were locked with her golden ones. His pupils staring at her slitted ones that stared at him with so much lust, Naruto found it hard to do anything other than breath. He didn't even notice that he had placed his other hand on her thigh, so enthralled he was by her that such things went by unnoticed. You've captured my heart, Naruto-kun. I don't know how you did it, but somehow you did. This feeling I have when I'm close to you, or the pain I feel when you're away. I tried to deny it at first, telling myself it couldn't be what I thought it was as we've only known each other for a short amount of time. But that night, when we kissed, I knew I could no longer deny my feelings for you. Naruto said nothing as he let Yasaka speak, the hand on her thigh having began to massage the area. I love you, Naruto-kun, and I want to cement our relationship. So, she leaned forwards and pressed her lips against his, her tongue probing for entry, which he granted. After a minute she broke the kiss, her face hovering an inch or two in front of his as her cheeks were flushed. Take me, please. Naruto kept his eyes on her, even as he registered her words. For a moment Yasaka wondered if she made a mistake with how direct she was, as he had told her he had no prior experience with the opposite sex before meeting her. Thankfully her worries were put to rest as she let out a squeal upon feeling both his hands coming to rest on her cheeks before she was turned around. Are you sure? He whispered huskily, and she licked her lips before nodding her head. She could tell he was nervous and did her best to ease his mind as one of her hands rested on his cheek, her thumb tracing the faint whisker marks his face held. Naruto closed his eyes for a brief moment, clearing his mind of any thoughts before snapping them open and initiating a very sensual kiss that caught her off guard. She was quickly able to catch herself though before reciprocating in kind as the rest of the night passed by as a pleasant and very satisfying memory for both of them. Naruto stared at the space above him, his hand rubbing up and down Yasaka's naked back as her head rested on his chest. She had fallen asleep little over 15 minutes ago, more satisfied than she had been her entire life. He wiped away a few strands of hair that seemed to bother her, judging by how her face was scrunching up. A small smile formed on her face as he did so, as she unconsciously snuggled closer against him. As he kept watching, her realization hit him that he was no longer a virgin. He had actual sex with a bombshell of a woman who was very much in love with him, and he likewise with her. Love, such an interesting feeling it was, knowing somebody could care about you this much. It was moments like these he was glad of his decision of jumping into that terrorist space. And also that he was the only one as well. Dear God, he could already imagine Jiraiya's reaction upon knowing what had transpired between him and Yasaka. He shuddered as he could hear the man's perverted giggling already. It would probably be some sort of mix between proud and jealous. Proud for the fact that he managed to hook up with a woman such as Yasaka. Yet, at the same time, the perverted toad would be quite jealous for him hooking up with someone like her. That, and he would no doubt end up embarrassing him the worst way possible. Not to mention that there would be a chance their lovemaking would end up in one of his disgusting little books. While Naruto now understood why the man kept rambling on about regarding the pleasure of flesh, there is a limit about what you should and should not say out loud. Naruto was quite proud of himself for denying each and every offer Jiraiya had made for him to lose his V-card in one of the many brothels they had passed during their 3 years away from Konoha. While it was initially kind of awkward, especially as he was very nervous doing anything other than making out with her, Yasaka had been more than helpful and understanding with his inexperience, and didn't hold it against him. If anything, she seemed pleased that she was going to be his first, and most likely only, as she tired him out real good. Her stamina was as ridiculous as his own, in a good way though. His thoughts moved away from what he and Yasaka had done and began focusing on the future. More importantly, Konoha. Naruto knew that without a doubt they were trying everything to get him back to them. Some because he, according to them, belonged there and was their friend. That it was his home and duty as shinobi of Konoha to protect the village against any and all threats. Whereas others had much more selfish reasons. Naruto didn't doubt that Danzo was throwing a temper tantrum to Tsunade, most likely blaming the third Hokage that they wouldn't have lost their Jinchuriki had he been given to the man himself. That man was such a hypocrite. Naruto didn't even know where to begin. He remembered the third Hokage telling him to keep away from him when he was younger, one of the few useful pieces of advice the man had given him between the other bullshit he often spouted. Even now Naruto still held a small amount of dislike for how he manipulated him. Naruto understood that it was required of the Hokage to do what was best for the village, manipulating young, influential children not an exception. Yeah, his dream of becoming Hokage had become less and less the longer he was away from Konoha, to where it wasn't even on his mind when he had returned. Becoming Hokage was a dream of his younger, naive self. One that could be manipulated by any person that would have been willing to show him some kindness. It was just that the third Hokage was the only one to notice. Perhaps Danzo did as well, which was why he was told not to trust a word coming from the man's mouth. Regardless, the point is that the third seemed to be one of the few to notice how he craved any sort of affection and took advantage of his situation. Thinking of his younger self made him shake his head. How did he ever thought that becoming Hokage was the fastest path to becoming liked by the village? Was he too stupid to realize that in order to become nominated for Hokage in the first place you need to have the village's approval? It wasn't like their glares and scowls would magically turn into smiles all of the sudden. But enough of that. He sighed deeply to rid any lingering thoughts. He just hoped he could live the rest of his long life here, away from Akatsuki. He heard the Bijou growl in agreement, momentarily catching him off guard as it was the first time he had heard him this evening. "You've been quiet." The Bijou snorted. "Of course I have, not like you would have heard me or anything since you were busy with that blonde vixen. Nice job, by the way. If I didn't catch the first couple minutes I would have thought you were a natural." Naruto blushed at the casual way the Bijou implied he was watching. Had it not been for the fact that he recently had sex and a naked kitsune woman snuggled to his side, Naruto was sure he would have reacted quite loudly, but right now he felt quite shameless, and just gave a mental shrug. "Hope you enjoyed?" "I did. It was quite interesting to see firsthand. I wonder if they all scream like that one?" "TCH, shut up you stupid fox." His eye twitched as he could hear his laughter echo his mind. "But seriously, brat, nicely done. She's quite the looker compared to the little girls wandering around in Konoha. If I actually cared about you, I would have said that I'm proud. Thank you? Naruto replied with a sweat drop running down the side of his head. Anyway, it's getting late. I'll talk to you tomorrow if you want, that is. With that, Naruto closed their mental connection. Giving Yasaka sleeping for another glance, he too began to doze off to the land of dreams. Naruto woke up as he felt something, or rather someone, missing. His eyes fluttering open before lazily looking to his side, a small frown formed as saw that Yasaka was not there. The smell of food reached its way to his nose and he turned his head to see that the bedroom door was open. Understanding what that meant, he pulled the covers away, sucking in a breath as fresh air washed over his still nude body. With a soft sigh, he got out of bed, smiling as he noticed a neatly folded kimono placed on the dresser in the room. Walking over, he put the kimono on, rolling his shoulders to loosen up the muscles in his arms before he exited the room. He made sure to open up a window as the room still smelled like sex. How he knew that Naruto wasn't sure himself aside from it having a peculiar scent. Satisfied, he made his way towards the kitchen where he could tell the smell originated from. As he entered the kitchen, he came upon the scene of a brightly smiling Yasaka who seemed to have some kind of glow surrounding her. He also took notice of the slight limp in her steps and patted himself on the back, proud of his achievement, especially since she had quite the healing factor herself. "Oh, morning, Naruto-kun," she chirped as she made her war over to him and pulled him in an embrace. Naruto immediately returned the hug, taking a deep breath and inhaling her scent. "Good morning to you as well, Yasaka-chan. I see you've been busy." He looked at the table that was filled with freshly prepared food. "HM." She nodded her head. "I saw you were still sleeping, most likely tired from last night, and thought I would reward you for the very pleasurable night you gave me." She purred and he shivered as he felt her breath touch his skin. "I see that, looks very nice." He licked his lips as he was indeed quite hungry. Leaning a bit down, it kissed her cheek, making her hum from his touch. Trailing kisses upwards till he came in contact with her fox ears, he playfully nipped them, getting her to shudder as he felt her increase the grip she had on him. "While a part of me wouldn't mind continuing our activities from last night, the need for food comes first, unfortunately." "I know," she sighed as she broke their embrace, giving him a quick peck on the lips before moving to sit down. "Come on." She patted the empty chair next to hers. "I finished just before you came in." Naruto's eyes lit up, and quicker than either had expected, he was seated next to her, his plate full of all sorts of food Yasaka had prepared as he dug in. This is really good," he complimented her as he finished swallowing his bite. The rich taste overwhelmed his taste buds and he couldn't help but close his eyes and taste more. Yasaka laughed at his expression, pleased that it tasted good, before following his example as she filled up her own plate. "Oh, Naruto-kun," she spoke up and getting his attention. "Make sure to eat as much as you can, as today we will be continuing where we left off yesterday, except this time I will use my fox fire on you." She smirked as she saw him pale and quickly refill his already half-empty plate. Sighing blissfully, Yasaka watched him eat with a smile while consuming her own food as well. She looked forward to what the future would bring, especially now she was no longer alone. The rhythmic sound of flesh meeting flesh echoed throughout the room. Accompanying those sounds were the soft yet sensual whimpers along with husky moans filled with need. And more Naruto-kun, Yasaka whimpered each time she felt him fill her completely. Naruto didn't respond, not verbally at least. He increased the grip he had on her hips before thrusting upwards each time she came down. "Yes," she moaned as a shudder ran through her body. Naruto groaned softly as he felt her slick walls tighten around him, his eyes fixated on the sight of her cheeks rippling each impact. Wanting to change things up a little, Naruto surprised her by leaning up, wrapping one arm around her waist to keep her from moving while his other hand came up and groped her. Yasaka whined softly as the hold he had on her and began wiggling in his grasp, successfully grinded their crotches together. She cooed softly as Naruto began kissing and nipping along her collarbone up to her neck before focusing on a single spot and began sucking on her skin. "I'm close," he growled into her ears as he detached himself from her neck, satisfied to see a hickey there. Turning her head, Yasaka smashed her lips against his in a hungry, lust-filled kiss. Caught off guard, it allowed her to push him back onto the bed before turning around so she was now facing him. Naruto hissed softly at new yet pleasurable sensation he felt before resting his hands on her behind. Rolling her hips back and forth, it didn't take long for Yasaka to start bouncing in his lap. Naruto moved his gaze downwards from her lustful golden eyes to her swaying, noticing where his eyes went, she smirked before using her own hands and began to grope herself. Feeling his end near, and hers too, judging by her convulsing inner walls, he moved his hands up slightly before pulling her down and initiating a passionate kiss while thrusting into her with an increased pace. Yasaka moaned into the kiss as she was close, very close to her end and his thrust only making it easier. Giving her a couple more deep thrusts, Naruto sheathed himself inside of her completely as he came. Yasaka broke their kiss before burying her face in the crook of his neck as her walls clamped down on his member. The feeling of his warm seed triggering her own orgasm, and on reflex she bit his collarbone. Both Naruto and Yasaka panted as their orgasm tapered off. She didn't move, however, content with being where she was as she felt his hands rub up and down her back. Neither spoke for a moment, content with the silence that lingered the room. Naruto glanced downwards as he could feel her lay soft kisses on his neck and moved one hand up to run through her hair. Naruto released a deep breath as he could feel her inner walls clench around him due to still being inside of her. It was somewhat funny, really. It had been only a couple days since he had first lay with her and subsequently gotten rid of his V-card. Somehow, though, Yasaka had managed to coax him to have sex with her every night since then, sometimes even during the day. Well, it wasn't really hard for her in the first place. After all, he was technically still a teenager crazy on hormones. Adding a horny, beautiful vixen lusting after him, and it was only a matter of when he was going to give in. Still want more? Yasaka asked him softly upon feeling him harden inside of her. She knew even with her advanced healing she was most likely going to end up sore in the morning. Though she wouldn't deny it wasn't worth it. Huh. Oh, sorry, I was just remembering something. I'm sure you did, Yasaka giggled softly before kissing his cheek. I was remembering a certain pleasurable event that happened in your office 2 days ago. Yasaka blushed, though with how they were positioned he wasn't able to see it. Not like you didn't like it. He heard her mumble and chuckled. How could I not? There's something strangely enticing about doing it in your office. He felt Yasaka sink her teeth in his neck in response, a soft hiss escaping his lips as she did so. Moving his hands down to her rear, he gently massaged the plump cheeks. Yasaka released a cute squeal as Naruto suddenly rolled her to the side, whimpering in disappointment as his member released itself from her confines. Both leaned forwards and captured the other's lips, Naruto groaning slightly as Yasaka nibbled on his upper lip. Let's get some sleep, okay? We've an important event to attend tomorrow. Naruto raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Didn't I tell you? Yasaka blinked her eyes as Naruto shook his head. Oh well, I'll explain to you when I'm not so tired. Alright, I guess. Naruto leaned in to quickly peck her on the lips before pulling the covers over them. Yasaka snuggled into him, her head coming to rest underneath his chin. Naruto wrapped an arm around her before the two slowly drifted off to sleep. Whistling jovially, Naruto could be seen walking down the streets of Kyoto. He had just completed an assignment given to him by Yasaka, which had him deliver some important papers to one of the oldest Yukai clans living in Kyoto. Unfortunately, Yasaka wasn't able to deliver them herself, as she was quite busy making preparations for the party that was being held later tonight. It was a party celebrating another year of her leadership, or so she explained to him. She had also told him he was going with her as her date, as she didn't like going alone, and it would be a good way to introduce him to other important members of Kyoto, or people and Yukai alike in general. So here he was walking back to his current residence, after having successfully handed over the papers of much importance. Though they did look a bit skeptical when he had appeared before them, a quick show of his kitsune tails and ears was enough to get rid of any suspicion. That, along with the official stamp that was visible on the papers to see, which was only accessible by Yasaka herself, made it all the easier. He exited his thoughts as his senses warned him of potential danger. Just in time, too, as he was able to stop himself from bumping into the person who stood in front of him, his own blue eyes meeting brown ones which stared at him with a mixture of intrigue coupled with disgust. Straightening himself, Naruto noticed that the person in front of him was around his height, though he appeared to be a couple years older. He could sense the man had chakra inside of him, which made him a Yukai. The man had curly blonde hair a few shades darker than his own. Tilting his head to the side, he ran his hand through his hair before addressing the man who was blocking his path. Can I help you or something? I just got done delivering something and I need to return to Yasaka-chan. Naruto narrowed his eyes slightly as the expression of the man before him changed into a narrowed-eyed glare along with a small burst of killing intent. While he barely took note of it, largely due to having been blasted the killing intent of the bijou inside of him, he could see some civilians falter in their step before quickly looking around. Can you not? I'm not sure what your problem is with me, but Yasaka won't be happy if these civilians end up having a heart attack from your actions. Naruto crossed his arms as he sent the man a glare. The two kept glaring at another, not paying attention to what went on around them before Naruto sighed. Can you move to the side? I have to prepare myself for the celebrations held tonight, and I told Yasaka-chan I would be back soon. The man scowled at him as his enhanced senses were easily able to smell Yasaka's scent all over him. He didn't say anything though, instead he abruptly turned around before entering an alley to Naruto's right. Naruto shook his head. He actually had somewhat of an idea what that was all about, but acting ignorant was the better option at the moment. Judging from the small burst of his ki he had let out, who knows what would have happened. He had basically spewed doubts inside the man's head by doing so, not giving the man any answer to his thoughts and preventing a potential fight from breaking out. While Naruto was confident in his strength, he didn't know which species the other blonde was, along with the potential collateral damage that would have happened, and he wasn't ready to face Yasaka's wrath. With a shrug of his shoulder, he placed both hands in the pockets belonging to the black with orange-colored zipper he was wearing that was left open, showing that underneath it he wore a high-collared white shirt which looked good on him if the blushing faces of some of the girls he had walked past. It helped his confidence, not that he really needed it since he already had Yasaka, who was more than enough for him. He arrived back at Yasaka's residence after only a couple minutes of walking. Having been here for close to 3 months had given him more than enough time to figure out some of the shortcuts which led him to his destination much quicker. As he entered inside, he immediately heard Yasaka's soft humming, courtesy of his fox ears that were hidden by a simple illusion she had taught him. A basic skill every yokai was capable of in order to fit in with the humans. Heck, it was still weird for Naruto to consider himself no longer human. He was sure if he had arrived anywhere other than Kyoto he would have panicked a whole lot more and potentially got himself captured. It was only due to Yasaka's help he was able to integrate in this new world. A frown slowly formed as his thoughts went towards Yasaka and in turn to the blonde man that had stopped him in the middle of the street not too long ago. He was going to keep an eye out to make sure he wasn't going to attempt anything. While he doubted he was going to try anything against Yasaka, the reason being that said vixen should be quite a lot stronger. That, and he seemed to have a rather unhealthy interest in her. Though Naruto couldn't really blame him. Yasaka was after all a very sought-after woman not only in Kyoto but in general. She had both looks and power, the latter being more important when it came to the supernatural she had told him. It was the fact that she couldn't leave Kyoto for long amounts of times at once combined with the somewhat intimidating position as Yukai leader she had that put off most people that were interested in her. Kind of pathetic in his opinion, but whatever. Their loss is his gain, and she was definitely worth it. Something wrong? The soft-sounding voice of Yasaka reached his ears and he turned to her, only to realize he was sitting on the couch next to her. What do you mean? Well, you didn't even greet me and you walked in with a frown on your face. Did anything happen while delivering those papers? Naruto shook his head. No. Well, actually, yes. He sighed and got Yasaka's attention. She looked over to see him troubled. Not liking it, since he's usually quite upbeat, she wrapped an arm around his neck before pulling him down so his head was resting on her lap. Naruto didn't fight it, instead closing his eyes as he felt her fingers began to run through his blonde locks. Tell me what happened? She asked him softly as Naruto dropped the illusion, allowing her to gently rub his ears. Purring softly from her ministrations, Naruto eventually answered. The assignment itself went alright. They were a bit skeptical upon seeing me, but showing the stamped papers got rid of that. Once that was confirmed, I handed it over and was done. They had invited me in, but I politely declined. The problem arose when I was heading back here. Naruto growled softly as Yasaka stopped petting his ears and stopped when she continued. Where was I? Yes. I was walking back towards here leisurely when I was stopped as someone stood in my way. I don't know who this person was, as this had been the first time I had seen him really. Anyway, I asked if there was a problem as this person was scowling and glaring at me, which only increased in intensity upon mentioning your name. He flared his ki in an attempt to intimidate me, something that only resulted in panicking civilians. We stood there for a bit, glaring at each other. I didn't do anything else though, as who knows what might have happened, seeing as he apparently cared little of not at all for bystanders with how he was flaring his killing intent. Luckily nothing came out of it, partly due to me acting ignorant to his apparent ire. Yasaka frowned as Naruto finished explaining. Gently she turned his head so he was facing her before speaking. Can you describe this person who was causing you trouble? What you told me is somewhat concerning, especially the part where he was putting civilians in danger. Only civilians? What about me? He pouted at her, which earned him a whack to the top of his head. Ouch. Yasaka shook her head at his antics. I know you can take care of yourself, Naruto-kun. The civilians on the other hand can't, especially not against someone capable of generating enough ki to affect multiple people. Naruto sighed as he nodded. Yeah, I know. As for what he looked like, he was around my height, maybe a bit shorter or taller, I'm not sure. He had short curly blonde hair darker than either of us and brown eyes. Aside from that, there wasn't really anything else that stood out other than that I'm 99% sure he's a yokai. Which species I'm not sure, but he could smell your scent all over me. Yasaka put on a contemplating expression at the description given Naruto while humming softly. From the description you gave me, I have somewhat of an idea who you're talking about. She mumbled softly, which wasn't missed by Naruto. HM? The person you're describing, I know who you're talking about. She released a sigh. He's been a bother for a while, honestly. He's a Inagami, a dog yokai who had set his sight on me a while ago. I declined his advance though. It was clear what went on in his mind. He had little to no interest in me as a person, only seeing me as a piece of meat. She scowled, an expression that looked surprisingly hot on her, though he didn't say anything. Fool even fought me to show he was worthy. I don't have to tell you how that went, no. Naruto shook his head. While he had no idea how powerful that man was or Inagami in general, he very much doubted they were stronger than a Kyuubi. No, you don't. Seeing how we're currently positioned, it's clear to me. Yasaka smiled down at him before leaning down and pecking him on the lips. Pouting at how quickly she broke the kiss, he asked her another question. So should I be worried? Like, how strong is he, just so I know in case something happens? Well, I wouldn't say worried. Yasaka shrugged her shoulders. The fight between him and myself were quite a while ago, and he wasn't all that strong. Though perhaps his arrogance got in the way, as I didn't have to put much effort in it at the time. Yasaka bit her bottom lip as she gained a thoughtful expression. He might be stronger. No, I'm pretty sure he is, as he seemed quite determined on getting me back then. Even then, the strongest Inagami ever recorded was only said to have reached ultimate class, and that was only after centuries of training. Interesting. Naruto mumbled before he sat back up. A mischievous glint in his eyes as he surprised Yasaka by casually lifting her up and placing her in his lap. It seems we both are in a sour mood. He whispered against her neck, making her close her eyes at the feeling. How about we change that, HM? He didn't wait for a reply as he began to suck on her neck. Giving in to her lust, Yasaka abruptly turned around in his lap, so she was now straddling his waist while giving him a luring smile. I guess it wouldn't hurt. We still have a couple hours before the party begins, and it would do us no good to be in a bad mood by then. Glad you see it my way. With that, he sealed his lips to hers as they got into their favorite way to pass time. It was close to 9 in the evening, and in one part of Kyoto celebrations were held. Yokai of all kinds could be seen conversing with one another, while young children were playing with several stall games that had been set up. They all had their animal features out, as the celebrations were only attended by those that were yokai themselves, as each clan had received an invite for their members. Yasaka, along with Naruto, were present as well. The two had garnered several raised eyebrows upon their arrival as they had their arms locked. Of course, it was widely known by the general populace that he was living with Yasaka, and the two had a good relationship with another. Just exactly what sort of relationship wasn't as known. Most merely wrote it off as Yasaka allowing him to stay with her due to him being a kitsune yokai as well, with very few people knowing the extent of their relationship. Those few, though, did know exactly what it was, having seen the two walk arm in arm together that evening when he had asked her out. They too had noticed that Yasaka seemed much happier the past few days, almost glowing even. Coupled with the fact that their enhanced smell was easily capable of picking up Yasaka's scent all over him, and likewise the same with her, it wasn't hard to come to conclusions. Currently, Yasaka was having small talk with several clan heads. While it appeared they were congratulating her on another year under her leadership, Yasaka knew otherwise. They were trying to earn favors from her. While not noticeable in the beginning, she could see where they were trying to lead their conversation towards. They were greedy, not as much as devils who practically lived off of it, but enough to assign said sin to them. It was in the blood of any supernatural being, to gain more power for their own cause. She sighed as she wished they would finish up so she could spend more time with Naruto. It was weird how, despite only being a couple for so short, she already disliked being away from him even for short times. Seeing how they weren't going to stop for a while, she sighed before she started looking around for the other kitsune yokai that was at the party. There. She saw the familiar sun-kissed spiky blonde hair with a pair of fox ears peeking out between them. Yasaka narrowed her eyes and began to growl softly as she saw several Nikomata surrounding a flustered-looking Naruto. Each of them was wearing a skimpy kimono that revealed way more than necessary while giving him subtle touches. The men talking to her gulped as they could sense the slow build-up of killing intent coming from Yasaka, and took that, along with her growling, as a sign they were overstepping their boundaries. Seeing that they stopped talking to her, Yasaka huffed before she began marching over to Naruto, who turned his head towards her as he could sense her nearing him. His eyes showed relief as she pretty much scared away the three dark-haired Nikomatas as they got the message that he was clearly taken. Naruto gave her a thankful smile for saving him from the trio. Thanks, Yasaka-chan. Who knows what might have happened had you not scared them away. They didn't listen when I said I was here with company. It's okay, Naruto-kun, I shouldn't have left you by yourself. She apologized, which he waved off as he offered her a drink. This is pretty good, Yasaka commented as she took a sip. Next to her, Naruto agreed as he too took a sip of his drink before agreeing. The two stood there for a moment, just leaning against the other as behind them Yasaka intertwined her tails with his. The only sign that he noticed was the slight shiver that ran down his spine, which he ignored as he let his eyes travel over the attendees, looking away as he locked eyes with the trio of Nikomatas from earlier who sent him flirty winks. Honestly, Naruto wondered what it was that made the woman of this world so attractive. Seriously, everywhere he looked the girls/woman possessed otherworldly beauty that made kunoichi back in Konoha or anywhere else pale in comparison, their yukai features just adding to their appeal. He glanced to Yasaka, who was resting her head on his shoulder with a content smile on her face. It was a smile that fit her well as it increased her already immense beauty. He wondered if bringing Yasaka and him together was a way of fate saying sorry for fucking him over in his younger years. If it was, he welcomed it, and would treasure her with everything he could. He leaned his head down and kissed her between the ears, earning him a look from Yasaka, which he replied with a smile before whispering something that caused her eyes to widen. I love you, Yasaka-chan. It was the first time he said that to someone. His younger self would have imagined himself saying it to Sakura, but not this version of him. Even what he felt for her when he was younger was nothing compared to how he was feeling whenever they were together. It was a feeling that was hard to describe. Aside from that, he felt a pleasant sensation around his heart whenever she would flash him a smile. Or the feeling of electricity running through his body with a single touch, and the feeling of ecstasy that threatened to overwhelm him when they would lock lips together. Naruto raised an eyebrow as all of a sudden the music changed into something more slower. Feeling a tug on his arm, he looked at Yasaka to see her smiling at him, while nudging her head towards several dancing couples were at. Yasaka, I don't. Naruto tried to find the correct words, only to falter as her bottom lip began trembling. Please, she asked with a cute tilt of her head. Knowing that he wasn't going to win Naruto's side before nodding, and was rewarded with a beautiful smile as she began leading him to where the other couples were. Naruto let his eyes travel downwards as he noticed the sway of her hips, which was accentuated by the form-fitting dress she wore. Well, it seemed he was going to get something out of it to make it worth possible embarrassment. Naruto took notice of the stares that were on them, though he did his best to ignore them by focusing on the Yasaka, who stopped before turning to face him. I have no idea how to dance, by the way, Naruto muttered as he averted his gaze. Yasaka just smiled at him. That's alright. Just follow my lead, okay? Nodding his head, Yasaka moved one of his hands to her waist while intertwining their fingers with the other. Smiling at him, Yasaka began swaying softly in tune with the music that was being played as Naruto did his best to follow her lead like she told him. He was a bit clumsy in the beginning but quickly adapted, which wasn't really a surprise as he always was more a hands-on type of person. As they slowly danced to the beat, neither Yasaka nor Naruto broke eye contact with the former, smiling lovingly at him as he did the same. Naruto stayed silent during their dance, unaware of just how much attention the two were gathering as his eyes were entranced by her beauty. Her golden blonde hair waving lightly as he twirled her around before surprising her, as he pulled her closer, so now she was resting her head against his chest. The hand that was previously held by her own was now resting on the small of her back. This is actually quite nice, Naruto said softly. Yasaka just hummed before looking up as she felt Naruto stiffen for a brief moment. Something wrong? Naruto didn't reply, immediately prompting Yasaka to raise an eyebrow. Look towards the corner on your left. He's been sending killing intent towards me, he whispered in her ears, whom twitched. Doing what he asked? From the corner of her eyes, Yasaka could see who he was talking about. She recognized the person being the same blonde man that had been bothering her, and now had set his sights on Naruto. Standing on the tip of her toes, she placed a kiss on the corner of his mouth. Just ignore him, alright? I want to spend time with you without worries. Naruto gave the other blonde a last glance to see him now glaring at him before nodding to Yasaka. Good, she purred sweetly. Keep this up and I might reward you later. Had he still been the naive boy he used to be, he might have wondered what she meant by rewarding him. But he no longer was that simple-minded child, so he gave a smile as he pressed her a bit closer, already looking forward to when they would go back to her home. Naruto yawned as he ran a hand through his disheveled blonde locks. His feet were being dragged across the floor as he was still half asleep, evident by the lazy bobbing of his head with every step he took. Stumbling in the living room, Naruto took note of Yasaka, who was awake as well and looked a whole lot better than he did. Morning, Yasaka! Naruto stopped mid-sentence as he fell to his knees. His hands were clenched into fists with such force that blood leaked out of his palms. Naruto yelled as he felt like his entire body was on fire while at the same time a part of his body was being forcefully pulled elsewhere. Never before in his life had Naruto felt this kind of pain. Even the Chidori Sasuke had impaled in his chest paled in comparison to the hell he was currently in. Just as his head was about to make contact with the floor, Yasaka was at his side, worry clearly visible on her face. Naruto-kun. She pulled his head into her lap before placing a hand on his forehead. Her worry increased as she felt how hot he currently was. His eyes were unfocused and aimed at the ceiling. Channeling chakra to the palm of her hand, she watched as his body slowly stopped trembling. Yasaka breathed out a sigh in relief as Naruto's own breathing calmed down, and his eyes regained their focus if only very weakly. Thank you? Naruto whispered weakly with a half-hearted smile. I think I'm going to pass out now. No sooner than those words were spoken, he closed his eyes, leaving Yasaka cradling his unconscious body. Seeing how they were still on the floor, Yasaka stood up before gently lifting up his body before carrying him to the couch. She sat down herself before placing his head back in her lap and began running his fingers through his hair. While on the outside Yasaka was taking care of him, Naruto woke up inside of his seal. Groaning, he sat up, realizing he was in front of the bars that held the bijou at bay. Sighing audibly, Naruto stood up before he walked closer, all while the bijou stared at him. So, Naruto scratched the back of his head. You have any idea what that was? The pain I felt was on a whole other level than anything before. The bijou kept quiet for a moment, and Naruto was about to ask something else when he spoke. What you experienced was a result of those toads trying to summon you towards them. You should be glad it failed, as you would not have survived had they succeeded. The amount of chakra required was more than they are capable of using. Naruto frowned at that. What do you mean I would have died? Would you not be able to keep me alive like before? The bijou scoffed. Foolish boy, if I would have done that, you still would have ended up dead. Your body is not capable of accepting more of my chakra than you already have, any more, and your body would die from the inside. I see. Naruto looked down at the ankle-height water for a moment. What about my own healing factor, would that not help? No, while your body is stronger than it was before the transformation, it is still not enough to survive dimensional travel on this scale. Even ours combined would not be enough. Naruto clicked his tongue. Oh, is there something I can do to make it stop? Knowing them, this won't be the last time they will attempt to reverse summon me, and who knows what will happen the next time. No, there's nothing you can do unless you can contact them and tell them to stop. You'll just have to endure. Now leave, I'm in no mood to speak longer than necessary, and that vixen of yours is worried. Naruto's eyes lit up at the mention of Yasaka. Very well, thanks anyway. It's been nice talking with you, regardless of how short it was. His words surprised the bijou, though he didn't reply as he watched him disappear from the seal. Keeping his gaze on the spot Naruto previously occupied, he released a snort before going back to slumber. Are you okay? Naruto heard as he regained consciousness. His blue eyes looking up at Yasaka, who still had a worried expression, and nodded softly. Yeah, I now know what the cause was. Yasaka raised an eyebrow. Really? She sounded surprised. Naruto nodded. My homeworld was attempting to summon me back. It obviously didn't work, and the result was me feeling like my body was being pulled apart. Yasaka frowned at that, a pang of pain shooting through her at the thought of losing him. Is there anything I can do to help? I don't want you to leave. He shook his head, much to her disappointment. No, even the bijou inside me said I just have to endure. The ones attempting to summon me are not powerful enough, and there's a large chance nobody is. I won't leave though, so don't worry, alright? I want to build my future here, with you. The latter was whispered softly, though Yasaka was still able to pick it up. She smiled down at him, she too having the same thoughts, though she didn't voice them. Instead, she asked him something else to change the topic. Are you by any chance hungry? I can prepare us some breakfast if you want. Naruto nodded his head at the thought of her food. That would be nice. I love your cooking. Giggling softly, she gently moved his head off of her lap before she stood up, not before giving him a kiss beforehand. Alright, I'll be back soon, okay? Sure. Naruto replied as he watched her leave. He propped his head up with his own arm as he thought back to Konoha. He wasn't lying when he told Yasaka he wanted to build a future here. Despite that, though, a small part of his mind couldn't help but wonder what was happening back there, or if he was ever going to see either of them again. Minutes later, just as she told him, Yasaka returned carrying a tray which held 2 bowls. Naruto quickly sat up while Yasaka took the seat next to him while giving him his bowl, which turned out to be filled with udon noodles, eggs, and vegetables. He thanked her before digging in. Her homemade ramen was even better than Ichiraka's, something that he thought was impossible. Taking a brief moment to watch as he dug and Yasaka joined him while informing him of what they would be doing for the day. "Oh, thank you," Naruto said with a slight incline of his head in thanks as a steaming hot, freshly made bowl of ramen was placed in front of him. Picking up the chopsticks, Naruto wasted no time before digging in. It tasted good, as expected of ramen FO course, but still. It was Ichiraka ramen good, which was impressive as their cooking was only surpassed by Yasaka herself, whose homemade ramen was something completely else. Unfortunately, he himself sucked at cooking, though Yasaka had told him one of these days she was going to help him improve those skills. Speaking of which, the vixen was currently busy with her work as a faction leader, which is why she had directed him to this specific ramen stall. According to her, it was the best one could get, her own cooking excluded, and after tasting it, Naruto had to agree. Nevertheless, Naruto stopped thinking about it as he continued to almost inhale the food presented to him. The sudden arrival of someone who sat down right next to him caused Naruto to pause briefly before giving the newcomer a look over. First thing Naruto noticed was that he was taller than him, something quite surprising as the sudden growth spurt he had gotten due to the modifications to his body put him above almost everyone he had come across around here. The second thing was that he was big. While he himself was no slouch, his own body was more like a swimmer's body with lean muscles, whereas this person was more bulky with broad shoulders. He had dark spiky hair, not as wild as his own but still spiky, and violet eyes similar to his when he had his kitsune features out. Naruto's eyes then narrowed slightly as he could sense the dark energy inside of this man, indicating that he's a devil. He didn't do anything though, as there was no reason, seeing as the man was apparently ordering some food himself. That, and Naruto could sense the large yet controlled amount of whatever energy devils used inside of him. Though he would inform Yasaka of it when he was done, just in case. "Is there something I can help you with?" the man addressed him, which made him blink before meeting his gaze with his own. "Me? Not really. I was just surprised someone else came here, as I heard this little shop isn't all that known compared to some other restaurants in Kyoto." Naruto quickly managed to form a reason for why he was staring at him. The man's violet eyes seemed to look at him for something Naruto couldn't quite place, but whatever it was, it must have satisfied him as he nodded with a big smile. "Indeed, but I thankfully managed to find this specific one when I was visiting here last time while hungry. A good thing too, as you can't find stuff like this back home." Naruto nodded his head in agreement to his words. Though he actually could get this back home, he could understand where he was coming from. "I'm Serog Bale, by the way." He held out a hand towards him. Accepting it, Naruto gave him a smile as he too introduced himself. "Naruto Uzumaki, resident here in Kyoto." He smirked slightly as he could feel the strong grip he had, though he answered by increasing his own strength. After a moment of measuring the other's strength, Serog let go as his food he had ordered was placed in front of him. Naruto watched as Serog dug in as he too continued eating his bowl, though he made sure to order another one. Serog, hearing that, ordered another bowl as well, which gained Naruto's attention as he sent him a look. Their eyes met, and on some unspoken command a competitive glint flashed in both their eyes before they began to devour their food with newfound vigor. Seconds later, Naruto finished his bowl only for his eyes to widen as Serog was close to finishing with his as well, which was surprising given that he had started way before him. Luckily though, a new bowl was placed in front of him, and he quickly got to work, a glance to the side showing that Serog too had finished and already a new bowl was placed before him. Seeing that this was going to be harder than he had thought, Naruto kicked it up a notch, his hands a blur, as he seemed to not even swallow his food. Next, both exclaimed at the same time, which caused them to glare at the other. Lightning seemed to be flashing between their eyes. Unnoticed either of them, or rather not caring, a crowd had started to form as they watched the two eat with a seemingly empty stomach. Bets were being made on who was going to outlast one another while the owner of the ramen stall was working his ass off. Tap, tap, tap. Came the sound of Yasaka's ghetto with each step she took as she walked through the streets of Kyoto. Her eyes were darting from left to right as she looked for the sun-kissed blonde hair belonging to Naruto. She had given him directions to her favorite ramen stall in order for him to get something to eat, as unfortunately she had been busy with her work and couldn't prepare them dinner herself. While that in itself wasn't a problem, the fact that it had been almost 2 hours since then was. She doubted he was lost. After all, he had walked through Kyoto plenty of times, and the directions she gave him incorporated the more known streets. Then, the sound of what appeared to be a crowd cheering caught her attention. Her concealed fox ears twitching in response before she headed towards the source, which, coincidentally, seemed to come from the direction the ramen stall should be at. Entering the street, Yasaka frowned as what she heard was indeed what she thought it was as she saw the large crowd around the small ramen stall. Moving closer, she could hear people cheering on whoever was there. Another one! Yasaka heard a familiar voice exclaim and narrowed her eyes. Me too! A second voice spoke, like the one before it. This one was a male as well. Still narrowing her eyes, she stepped closer, scowling lightly as she was unable to see what was happening due to the amount of people present. So, Yasaka began pushing her way through. Her enhanced strength easily made her able to shove others away as she got a look at what was going on. Only for her mouth to open and her eye to begin twitching at the scene she stumbled upon. There, stuffing his mouth full with noodles, was Naruto, a massive pile of bowls stacked to his left. Though upon a closer look he looked to be ready to fall over. Moving her eyes to the right, she saw the reason for all the commotion that was being caused. Yasaka quickly recognized the other person as Serorg Bale, a kind devil that would visit Kyoto every now and then to visit the local orphanage here in Kyoto that was for yokai. However, the twitching of her eye seemed to increase as she saw a similar pile of bowls to the young man's right as he too was stuffing his face full. And, like Naruto, seemed to be on his last leg. Yasaka watched as both Naruto and Serorg finished their food at the same time before glancing weakly at the other. Bam! Seconds after their weak glaring contest, their heads simultaneously impacted the counter, both seemingly out cold. Yasaka's twitching stopped as she took a couple deep breaths in order to calm herself, or she wasn't sure what she would do. There wasn't much that she could really do with these people around her. More specifically, she couldn't let her kitsune features free before delivering punishment. So with that in mind, she narrowed her slitted, golden eyes before leveling him with an immense yet concentrated amount of killing intent. She watched with thinly veiled satisfaction as he shot up, his head moving frantically from side to side, no doubt from the danger he sensed. Yasaka was right. Naruto's eyes darted from left to right before settling on the stacked bowls next to him once the direct sense of danger was gone. With a single eyebrow raised, he turned to his right, his gaze coming to rest on Serorg, who seemed out of it. Ah, that's right. We had a competition who could eat the most, Naruto mused before glancing at the pile of bowls Serorg had, which seemed to match his own. Narrowing his eyes, he looked towards the chef, who seemed to look quite nervous for some reason, and asked, You don't happen to know who won, did you? His question seemed to increase the unease the old man had before nodding slowly. Did you both had tea the same amount? What? Naruto couldn't help but yell, which successfully woke Serorg up. What do you mean the same? These have to be over 50 bowls right here. He gestured to his side where the empty bowls were. Well, yes, but... Naruto said. Man in question paled at the voice while the old man sighed in relief. Slowly, very, very slowly, Naruto turned around only to shrink at the look Yasaka was giving him. Next to him, Serorg had turned around as well. He recognized the woman standing there as Yasaka, the nine-tailed kitsune and current ruler of Kyoto. Nevertheless, he curiously looked on while wondering what the relationship between his newly made eating partner was and her. Especially with the reaction she managed to get out of him, as he didn't seem like someone that would get scared this quickly. Seeing him shrink underneath her gaze, Yasaka continued. When I told you to get yourself some dinner, I expected you to do just that. What I did not account for was for you to be gone for 2 whole hours. Naruto did his best to make himself as small as possible. A glance to his side showed him that Serorg looked amused at the situation Naruto had found himself in. You know how worried I was. Here I was thinking about what might have happened that caused you to be away for so long only to find you stuffing your face full. Yasaka's pupils dilated as Naruto whimpered pathetically. Please, Yasaka-chan, I am sorry. Please? He pleaded with watering eyes. Yasaka glowered at him before she made her way towards him. Naruto visibly flinched at that while also taking note that the crowd that used to be here was no longer there. He closed his eyes while holding his head down, ready for whatever she was planning to do. However, surprise overtook him as instead of pain he felt Yasaka wrap her arms around his neck before pulling his head against her chest. Despite freezing for a split second, Naruto brought his own arms up as he returned her embrace. He could feel her fingers lovingly run through his hair. I'm sorry. Naruto mumbled, this time sounding much more sincere as he rubbed her back with one of his hands. Off to the side, Serorg looked at the couple with a raised eyebrow. He still wasn't sure what the relationship between his eating rival and the beautiful kitsune yokai was. Though, from what he was seeing, they seemed quite close. He was proven correct when Naruto pulled back before looking up, Yasaka doing the same but looking down instead as the two shared a quick kiss. Nothing too extreme, just a peck on the lips. So, since you're here, I take it your work is done? Naruto asked as Yasaka made herself comfortable in his lap. She nodded her head with a hum. Correct, I finished not too long ago before I went searching for you as I couldn't find you back home. Naruto chuckled at that as he wrapped his arms around her waist, while Yasaka ordered a bowl of ramen herself before addressing Sarorg, who looked at them. So, I take it you're here to visit the local orphanage again? She asked him with a cute tilt of her head. Sarorg nodded. Correct. In fact, I already completed my visit earlier today. The kids were very happy with the toys I bought them. Yasaka smiled at that. That's nice. I remember the owner of the orphanage asking me if I knew when you would be visiting again. Those kids all look up to you, you know. Sarorg smiled as Yasaka turned to the side as the dish she had ordered was served. Separating the chopsticks, she began to eat with much more elegant than either Naruto or Sarorg displayed. Both who ate like someone who had their last meal weeks ago. Time passed as the trio continued their small talk until it had gotten dark. Sarorg stood up before facing both Kitsune. Yes, he had found out Naruto was a Yukai as well. The first hint being the fact that he could sense chakra within him. The second hint was, well, it wasn't so much of a hint actually, as Naruto had straight up informed him of that. He was still a bit surprised at the knowledge that they were a couple, as everyone in the underworld, or rather supernatural in general, knew who Yasaka was and that she was a highly sought-after woman. So to see she was taken by someone who appeared to be his own age was quite surprising, really. Tough with both of them being Kitsune Yukai, it made some sense that Yasaka wanted someone much like herself, and why she had rejected over a dozen suitors from various factions in existence. Well, Sarorg began, it was nice meeting you, Naruto, though next time I will make sure to win our eating contest. Naruto scoffed. Oh please, no one, and I mean no one, can outdo me when it comes to ramen. He held his head up high in a dismissive gesture. Yasaka sighed before lightly tapping Naruto on his head while shaking her own. It was nice meeting you again as well, Yasaka-dano. Perhaps next time I can bring someone with me. The Kitsune Yukai gave him a soft smile. Likewise, and I would be more than welcome to whomever you will bring. With that having been said, Sarorg bid them farewell, Naruto and Yasaka waving him goodbye as he walked off. Watching him leave, Naruto and Yasaka stayed for a bit longer, exchanging a couple words with the owner of the shop they were still at, mainly the bill that Yasaka had offered to pay, as it was quite a lot they had managed to rack up. Having done that, Yasaka hopped off his lap before helping him up. The couple bid the owner a farewell before heading up to Yasaka's home. Yasaka gave her recently cleaned living room a look over to make sure she hadn't missed anything, nodding her head in satisfaction once she could see everything was perfect. The reason she was doing this was due to a message she had gotten earlier today, which briefed her on the fact that someone from the Shinto faction was going to be visiting her. Naturally, that had surprised her quite a bit. While Kyoto, or more specifically the Yukai, had good relations with the Shinto gods, it was still rare for them to visit. Regardless, though, she couldn't quite decline them despite the short notice she had been given. So for the past hour she had been busy making sure her home was in pristine condition. While she could have had someone else do it for her, she sometimes liked to do these chores herself so she could make sure she wasn't missing anything. Naruto wasn't present at the moment, as she had gotten a request from the Nikomatas who required his help. While initially she wasn't quite sure to send him, as last time he was alone they had tried to more or less get in his pants, Naruto had assured her that the moment they would attempt anything of such nature he would leave and would make that clear to them as well. So she had given him the benefit of her own doubt, and handed him the directions the district the Nikomatas were in. The sudden bright glow that appeared in her living room successfully startling Yasaka as she watched the bright light die down before quickly bowing her head towards the person in front of her. Soft giggling reached her twitching ears as a soft feminine voice spoke up. Please raise your head, Yasaka-chan, there's no reason to bow. Yasaka did what was asked and lifted her head, her own golden eyes meeting a pair much like her own yet different. Whereas her own were golden in color, the ones belonging to the woman before her were like miniature suns that shone brilliantly. Those eyes belonged to the raven-haired woman who looked to be in her early 20s. She was clad in an elegant black kimono which had golden accents on the sleeves in the form of small suns circling them. Aside from that, she wore a magatama necklace and wore a pair of wooden geta. And may I ask why you are here, Lady Amaterasu? Yasaka asked after a moment of staring. Instead of answering her, Amaterasu gestured towards the couch. Understanding what she was asking, Yasaka moved over as she sat down, the goddess of the sun herself sitting down across from her. Yasaka opened her mouth to speak only to be beaten to the punch by Amaterasu. Some interesting information reached me recently. She began, something about you being seen with a blonde kitsune? Yasaka blinked. That was straight to the point, which was somewhat surprising. Yes, is there an issue with that? Amaterasu quickly shook her head. No, nothing of sorts, Yasaka-chan. Everyone knows it's about time. However, the issue is that not too long ago foreign energy was being sensed coming from here. You don't happen to know something about that, do you? Yasaka was silent as she inwardly mulled about whether or not she should reveal the information Naruto had trusted her with. While lying to a goddess such as Amaterasu was never a good thing, she didn't want to betray his trust in her. Don't lie to me, Yasaka. This is very important, and I need to know whether or not he was the source. Sighing deeply, she nodded. That's correct, Amaterasu-sama. Upon sensing the foreign energy, which turned out to be a more refined version of chakra, my guards and I quickly went to the source, which ended up being an empty field not too far from here. When we arrived there, we found Naruto-kun in a very bad condition. I could sense chakra coming from him, and on the off chance that he was a Yukai, I had them bring him to the hospital here in Kyoto. I see. Anything else that's worthy of mentioning? Yes. Initially, after he woke up, he insisted on being human, and when I mentioned his usage of chakra, he told me it was something his people were capable of. I already had an idea what might have happened or where he was from. Something that only got stronger when he in fact mentioned that everyone was born with chakra where he is from, so I ignored that for now. Regardless, he was also quite surprised upon seeing my, well, tails and ears, you can say. Yasaka licked her lips before continuing. Anyway, seeing as he was awake, I brought him something to wear, as whatever he arrived with was in tatters, before assigning someone to send him to my office to talk. There my suspicions were confirmed that he is indeed from a different world entirely, as he didn't even know of Kyoto, or Japan in general. We actually got along quite well during our talk, and I offered him the guest room both to keep an eye on him and to keep other factions away, as well as I doubt they hadn't sensed the surge of energy upon his arrival. It wasn't until weeks later that I accidentally walked in on him, though I did knock. She added upon the smile Amaterasu sent her way. So I entered his room, where I saw him standing in front of a mirror. While normally that wouldn't be anything weird, the two tails that were swishing behind him were along with the fox ears peeking out between his hair. Seeing how he was pretty much caught, Naruto-kun had come clean to me entirely. Apparently where he's from they have a barbaric practice of sealing yukai in young children, and Naruto has a 9-tailed fox yukai inside of him. While similar to me, he's still quite different, as unlike us yukai he has no human form, or anything like it. Back to the point though, the 9-tailed fox had to force a large amount of its energy to keep Naruto and itself alive, as dimensional travel was close to tearing his body apart. Unfortunately, or fortunate depending on who you're asking, this had the unforeseen effect of merging them together. I guess no, more like Naruto was changed into a kitsune yukai due to the one sealed inside of him. Strangely though, after doing a blood test he had changed into a full yukai, which shouldn't have happened, but yet it did. Yasaka shook her head to rid her of the confusion. Where was I? The point is that Naruto is slowly but surely absorbing the yukai inside of him, which is why he now has either 3 or 4 tails. I'm not sure of that myself. Eventually though he will end up as a kyuubi much like myself, but when that will happen neither of us knows. How interesting. Amaterasu replied as she took in the information she was being told. Though why did he hide it in the first place? Here she saw the color in Yasaka's eyes dim a bit, and a frown formed on her face. Naruto-kun had a rather rough childhood due to the yukai that is sealed inside of him. I'm not going to tell you the details as those are too personal, so I apologize, but I won't do that to him, she said with finality, which made the sun goddess smile. Let's just say that the rather rough childhood made him a bit paranoid with strangers, especially with was in his own words a burden. Funnily enough, it was the yukai inside of him that pretty much told him that there was no need to hide, as he had pretty much seen me with my tails out, and we're in Kyoto, which is home to yukai in general. Yasaka finished her story with a fond smile. Amaterasu herself couldn't help but smile as well. The way she spoke of him showed the genuine care she had for him, which actually made her wonder as she looked around. Say, Yasaka-chan, where is this Naruto now? I would have expected him to be here. Oh, that. Well, I had received a request from the Nikomadas in the East District that they needed him for something. That was pretty much all it told me, so he should be busy there. He did promise me that if they would attempt anything unsavory he would leave, so that's that, she grumbled. Great. I'm happy to hear you finally found someone. Amaterasu stood up, prompting Yasaka to do the same. Walking over to the fox woman, Amaterasu pulled her in an embrace, which she returned. Disengaging from their embrace, Amaterasu took a step back as she let her eyes roam up and down Yasaka's body, briefly resting on her stomach area before moving upwards and making eye contact. I know it's none of my business, but have you two done it? Yasaka sputtered at the sudden question before answering with a blush. Well, yes, we did. Why? She saw Amaterasu suck in a breath. I'm not sure how to say this exactly, Yasaka-chan, but you're pregnant. Silence filled the room as she delivered that. Yasaka's eyes widened as she moved her hands over her stomach. Are you sure, Amaterasu-sama? I mean Naruto-kun and I. Amaterasu nodded her head. I'm absolutely sure. When I hugged you I could feel it very, very faintly, but there's no doubt that you are in fact pregnant. I see. Yasaka mumbled as she sat down. Her hands hadn't left her stomach as she appeared to be deep in thought. Yasaka-chan, I'm back. The two women heard the voice of Naruto coming from inside the house. Well, while I would like to meet him, I think this is not the ideal time, Amaterasu said as she looked back towards Yasaka. Good luck, Yasaka-chan, though from what you told me you shouldn't need it. I'll be busy with processing the information regarding Naruto to the other Shinto gods so they know he's not a threat. With that having said, Amaterasu glowed briefly as she teleported out of the room. Just in time, as well as seconds later, the door leading to the living room opened as Naruto walked in. He paused for a moment before blinking and shrugging his shoulders. Perhaps it was imagination, as he thought he had heard a different female voice speak, but there was no one here. Hey Yasaka-chan, I'm done with the request the Nikomatas had. I didn't have any issues either, as they are aware I'm taken by none other than you, he said before frowning as he spotted the faraway look she held. Quickly he walked over to her before sitting next to her and wrapping an arm around her. Yasaka-chan? Something wrong? No reply. Yasaka-chan? Yasaka, he waved a hand in front of her eyes, which successfully got her out of her trance as she noticed Naruto was holding her close. I'm fine, Naruto-kun, she responded in a much softer voice than normal. You're lying, Naruto stated, which made her widen her eyes. While I'm far from an expert when it comes to reading other beings, it's more than enough to know something is wrong with you. He used his free hand to cup her chin, turning her head so she was facing him before leaning in with a chaste kiss that had her close her eyes. Tell me what's wrong, Yasaka-chan. I don't like seeing you like this. His words were soft yet filled with love for her. She blinked rapidly as she could feel her eyes moisten. Naruto-kun, you won't leave me, right? Naruto moved his head back an inch at the sudden question. No, didn't I tell you I love you? Why would I ever want to leave you? You've done so much for me, I doubt I could ever repay you. That did it. Yasaka couldn't help herself as tears trickled down her cheeks before she buried her face in his chest. Naruto was confused. He honestly wasn't sure what was going on that caused her to be like this. Nevertheless, he did what he thought was best and lifted her in his lap before wrapping his arms around her and held her close. He wasn't sure how long he stayed like this, comforting Yasaka, but eventually she was able to calm down. Now, can you please tell me what's bothering you? Naruto asked her while one of hands was combing through her hair. Swallowing audibly, she turned her head and faced him. Naruto could see it was hard for her, though he kept quiet as she did so. Taking a deep breath, Yasaka decided to get straight to the point. Naruto-kun, I am pregnant. Much like her own, Naruto's eyes widened at those words. His eyes looking into hers for any signs of deceit. Not finding any, he asked the first question that came to his mind. How? I thought that the chance to get pregnant was abysmal outside of a heat period. They are. Amaterasu was here earlier and told me that. I wasn't aware of it myself, as it hasn't been long enough, but it's within her power to sense life in others with something as simple of a touch. I see. So that was the voice I heard then, he muttered. But why are you crying? Isn't this good news? Good news? She repeated in wonder. You aren't upset? I mean, we've only been together for a short time and yet. Naruto couldn't help but laugh. No, of course not. Why would I ever be upset about something as this? You didn't think I would leave you or anything, right? I mean, I always wanted a family of my own. To not be alone again. I know I'm still young and admittedly don't know much if anything about parenting given my own lack thereof. But I know that you would be a great mother, and with your help it should be no problem. Naruto told her with a smile. Unable to keep a leash on her emotions, Yasaka smashed her lips against his, her arms wrapping around his neck. Naruto chuckling as Yasaka began to smother his face with kisses. It didn't take long for their kisses to become more intimate as soon their clothes met the ground, as their kissing had evolved into something more. As that happened, Naruto made sure not to forget to clean the couch later on. Naruto couldn't keep the smile off his face as he leisurely strolled through the streets of Kyoto. His head swaying from side to side as he hummed a soft tune, occasionally waving back when someone would greet him. It had only been a couple of days since Yasaka had revealed that she was pregnant, and that he was going to be a father, yet despite that, Naruto was sure he had never felt as happy as he did these last days. The smile he wore hadn't diminished in the slightest, still as bright and warm as the sun itself. He had, of course, as soon as he and Yasaka had finished with their fun time, wasted no time looking up for what he could be expecting for the upcoming 9 months. The technology they had here was truly one of a kind, as with the use of what was apparently called a computer, the information was literally at the tip of his fingers. Yes, it took a bit to understand exactly how it worked, but with Yasaka helping him out he was soon good to go. He had also began reading several books which would help recognizing certain behavior Yasaka could display during her pregnancy, just so he was prepared if it did indeed happen. Reaching their home, yes theirs, as he had now officially moved in with her. No longer was he just a guest, though one could say he never really was one in the first place, but that's not the point. Entering inside, Naruto immediately came face to face with Yasaka who, much like him, wore a radiant smile. Naruto couldn't help but admit that they were right when they said Yasaka looked like she had some sort of glow around her these past few days. "Hello, beloved." She greeted him softly before she was pulled into a tight embrace by the blonde. Their lips met in a chaste kiss before pulling back, and he pressed her head against his chest. His fingers began running through her blonde hair, which she let loose opposed to the ponytail it usually was in. Wrapping her arms around his neck, Yasaka did a small jump before locking her legs around his waist. Naruto's hands palmed her rear to hold her up while she rested her head on his shoulder. With a small chuckle he began walking towards the living room where he sat down. "So, what have you been up to, Yasaka-chan?" he asked her once as he leaned back into the couch. "Nothing much either," she mumbled before changing her position so she was sitting sideways in his lap. "I've been mostly looking for baby stuff, like clothing and such." Naruto blinked before glancing down at the kitsune woman. Isn't it a little early for that? I mean, do we even know the gender of the baby?" Realization dawned on Yasaka as she knew what she forgot to tell him. "Ah, that's right, you don't know about that." "Know about what?" he asked her, who then began to explain. "Pregnancies among certain species of our race is different. With certain races such as Nekomata, Nekashu or Kitsune, it's almost impossible for a male to be born, something you perhaps noticed during your visit there. It's why most female Nekomatas or Nekashus often mate with human males. In fact, I'm not even sure when the last time a male Kitsune was born." "Really? That might explain why I didn't saw a single male when I was there some days ago." A shiver ran down his spine as he remembered the lust-filled looks that were sent his way the entire time he spent there. "So you're saying the chance of our child being a girl is almost 100%? He received a nod from Yasaka before a worried look formed on her face. "You don't mind that, right?" Naruto quickly shook his head. "No. I don't care about something like that. Girl or boy, I'll love it regardless." A pair of lips touched his cheek when he said that as he turned to Yasaka, who smiled at him. A girl, Naruto couldn't help but smile at the thought. Even though he was still nervous, he was also looking forward to it. Having a family of his own, something he had dreamed of when he was younger. While still young, it wasn't completely unheard of back in Konoha or the elemental nations in general to become parents at a young age. After all, one might never know when it would be their last day. For some that could be their early teens, while others might end up lucky to die of old age. A privilege, some would say. Something else he was quite glad for that they didn't do here. He didn't want his children to become killers at a young age. To throw away their childhood for a noble cause like protecting a bunch of rich snobs. A load of bullshit that was. Brainwashing from early age to sacrifice their lives away is what they should call it. "I'll leave that to you then. I'm not really good when it comes to stuff like that. Hell, I can't even pick my own clothes without getting annoyed," Naruto joked. Don't be so hard on yourself, Naruto-kun. We can do it together, perhaps later after lunch?" He thought about it for a moment before nodding. "I guess that's fine. I might pick up some knowledge for myself while doing it." He brought a hand up to scratch his cheek, the other was wrapped around Yasaka's waist. "Spending more time with you is a plus as well." Charmer. "Heh, if someone would have called me that before meeting you, I would have thought they were crazy. Man, I really have changed a lot in the short time I've been here. It almost makes me wonder." He gained a faraway look in his eyes before they widened a bit. Yasaka followed his gaze only to see it was aimed at a while, not even one that was decorated very much. "Wonder what?" "This, the way I'm acting right now. It feels, well, natural compared how I acted before. I'm actually surprised I only just realized it, as it felt like how I used to act was almost forced. A mask I put up with to survive, to put up with the hate I endured during my childhood lest I fall to despair." He stopped talking as he felt Yasaka him in a tight embrace, her fingers affectionately running through his hair to offer comfort. Yasaka knew Naruto had a rather troubled childhood. Yet, even with him telling her about it, she never knew exactly how far it ran. Now though, even if it was just briefly, she understood his scars ran deep to the point that they were almost a part of him. Mental scars which his brain wasn't able to process. It was like his mind wasn't able to take his current situation as being real, thinking it was all just some sort of dream that would be gone if he would wake up. She couldn't help but admire him for how strong he was to fight through it. She had personally seen and read on what mental scars could potentially do to a person should they succumb to them. To survive what he went through and come out on top with a smile was definitely something to admire. It were things like this, things like his strong will and his outlook on life in general that made her love him all the more. Oh, Yasaka exclaimed as she felt his hands rub up and down her back and responded by placing soft kisses along his jawline. One of her hands that was previously running through his hair came down as she rubbed his cheek, smiling as she heard him release soft purr from her thumb tracing over the faint whisker marks he had. The sound of his stomach growling caused her to lean back, amusement twinkling in her amber eyes as Naruto looked away. With a shake of her head she stood up, still holding his hand before pulling him along to the kitchen. Come Naruto-kun, I'll show you how to make those onigiri which you like so much. His eyes lit up as he slightly increased his pace so she wasn't just pulling him along. By the way, in a few days I have an appointment in Tokyo and you will be accompanying me. Huh? Jiraiya, Tsunade greeted her old teammate who appeared inside of her office. Tsunade, he returned, earning a raised eyebrow due to greeting her without the usual hime. Anything new? The blonde asked as she used one of her hands to support herself. Jiraiya shook his head. Nope, nothing. Even reverse summoning has proven not to work. According to Ma and Pa, because the chakra requirements are far beyond what any living being has. They said that the only possible way of reverse summoning was by using a bija as the source. Tsunade dropped her head with a heavy sigh. I see. Have you heard the news? That Orochimaru is dead? Yes, I have. He looked out of the window overlooking the village. Guess the Uchiha wasn't keen on losing his body. Tsunade scoffed. Of course he wasn't. Who would? I'm sure Orochimaru himself knew this fact as well. It was only a matter of time when it would happen. Heh, is it weird that despite all he has done I still feel a pang of sadness? He turned to the blonde Hokage who shook her head. No, it's not. In fact, I too felt it. Briefly, but felt it nonetheless. Who would have thought that from between the three of us he would be the first to go? He shook his head to rid himself from those thoughts. Anyway, any information on what the Uchiha is planning next? I assume it has to do with his brother. Correct. Several reports have been received regarding Uchiha Sasuke. Each of these state that he has been seen traveling in company of a group of 4. We can assume these 4 have or rather had previous ties with Orochimaru and are put together solely for Sasuke to focus on his brother. Jiraiya rubbed his chin in thought before speaking. Do you have descriptions of these 4? I can ask around with some of my spies if they've seen any of them. We do. I don't have them with me at the moment, but they should be with the Umbu commander. I'll request them and give them to you later. That's fine. How's that one Hyuga girl doing, by the way? The long-haired one who's quite smitten by my apprentice? You mean Hinata? She received a nod. Well, her reaction was the worst from all of them, having pretty much broken down on the spot when she heard what had happened to him. Last I heard though was that she has no longer locked herself in her room, though that's only when Team 8 has training. So I've heard. Who would have thought it would? Hinata of all people had a crush on him. She has grown into quite a looker as well from the few times I've seen her around. Tsunade nodded her head before her eye began twitching as she caught him muttering something about lucky apprentices. Jiraiya, let's keep focusing on getting Naruto back. I'm sure that wherever he currently might be that he's scared and trying to find a way back to us. Naruto. Yasaka moaned loudly as his body shook from the orgasm she was experiencing, one that was prolonged by the feeling of his warm essence that he had released inside of her. Panting, Yasaka slumped down, her sweat-covered body coming to rest on his equally sweaty own. Amazing, just like always. Naruto complimented her as her inner walls constricted around his member, keeping him hard. After a brief rest where she regained her breath, Yasaka leaned back so she was once more straddling him. The look in her ember orbs, which seemed to glow in the otherwise dark room, spoke that they weren't done. After all, with stamina like theirs they could last forever. I love this woman, were his last thoughts as Yasaka began bouncing on his lap. Whoa! Naruto couldn't help but look in awe at the surrounding buildings as he and Yasaka exited the train station they had used to travel from Kyoto to Tokyo. Next to him, and having her arms locked with his own, Yasaka let out a giggle at his reaction, ignoring the looks that were sent their way as people looked at them with something of intrigue. After all, they were both blonde, with Naruto's hair color being even unique amongst that. She also took note of a few men checking her out before ignoring them and snapping Naruto out of his daze. Come on, Naruto-kun, you know we have an appointment to keep. Huh. Oh, sorry Yasaka-chan, it's just that it's quite different in comparison to Kyoto, or at least the parts one have been. You don't have buildings as tall as these where I am from with the exception of Amagekure, but it's impossible for someone that's not a civilian to enter, so it's the first time I'm seeing buildings as tall as these up close. Yasaka smiled. That's understandable, and I'm not angry or anything, it's just that we have an appointment, and I don't want to be late. We can walk around a bit when we are done before heading back, as I need to keep the ley lines in check. She then tugged lightly on his arm. Now, just keep following my lead, as it shouldn't be too far from here. Hey Yasaka? Naruto began as the couple walked through the very busy streets. Everywhere he looked, the sidewalks were full of people going about their day. Yasaka looked at him as she turned her head to the side, prompting him to continue. Why is this meeting here? Couldn't it be held in Kyoto? The shaking of her head made him raise an eyebrow, wondering who this person was that they were meeting that wouldn't be welcomed, as from his experience Kyoto has been nothing but nice, though him being a yukai now might be the cause for that. That, and the fact that he's in a relationship with Yasaka, of course. The person we're meeting is part of the supernatural, a fallen angel to be specific. While the full story is quite long, I'll make it simple, and the reason we're not having this meeting in Kyoto is due to the distrust fallen angels have. A couple years ago, a small renegade group of them kidnapped several yukai from different races. Once we were able to locate them, it was too late, as they had all been killed and the females had been. She didn't say it out loud, but Naruto knew what she was implying. In the elemental nations, rape was one of the worst fears for kunoichi, regardless of the village they belonged to. It was worse than death, as sometimes they were held captive for weeks, and in rare cases months. His first C-rank mission in Wave came to mind. The village had been taken over by a shipping magnate who ran the town dry, to the point people weren't able to pay taxes or able to afford anything really. It resulted in parents losing their daughters who would await a fate worse than death with that disgusting midget of a man. The dozen or so bandit camps he had come by during his travels when he would leave a shadow clone with Jiraiya came to him next. The dead look each of those women that were captured had haunted him for weeks before he managed to get over it, partially at least. Those women were so dead to the world it only made him feel anger to how vile someone could be. When he had approached them to save them, they didn't even flinch. No, instead they had opened their mouth while waiting for him to get on with it, which had almost brought a tear to his eye. Then, when he had freed them, he was once again caught off guard as one by one those women walked over to where a spare kunai lay before plunging it in their own heart, their expression staying blank even as they died. He was brought out of his memories as he felt a nudge in his side. Blinking a few times, he noticed Yasaka sending him a concerned look, to which he responded by giving her a smile. A very strange smile, which she noticed. Something wrong? A nod. Yeah, what you told reminded me of certain memories I rather forget. Yasaka's expression turned into one of understanding, as she knew what he meant. The rest of their walk was held in silence between them, just taking comfort in the presence of the other. After a while they finally arrived. It was an older-looking building, one that stood out quite a lot compared to the tall, modern building that was surrounding it. From where he was, Naruto looked inside, which was somewhat hard as there was a lack of lighting. Are you sure this is the correct place? He couldn't help but ask, as something about the building put him on unease, like he was feeling an overabundance of evil intent coming from the inside. It's owned by humans that are aware of the supernatural world, so it's a neutral meeting place. There are several of those spread throughout Japan or the world in general. Anyway, that's not what we are here for. History lessons can wait. As she finished informing him, she pushed open the door before entering, with him following after her. Once inside, Naruto was in for a surprise, as it was much more welcoming than it appeared from the outside. Soft music was playing in the background as he just followed after Yasaka, who walked towards one of the corners where two people could be seen. As they got closer, he saw one of them. The younger of the two had silver hair, while the older male had black hair with blonde bangs, the latter of the two waving them over. His eye twitched slightly, as they were the source of the evil intent he was sensing, and blocked them off to get a clear mind. Welcome, Yasaka-dano, the older man greeted as he was slouched into the bench while gesturing for her to take a seat. Azazel-san. She returned before sitting down. Making space, Yasaka motioned for Naruto to sit down next to her, which he did, earning a raised eyebrow of the fallen angel. And who might this be? He inquired. His violet eyes seemed to be inspecting him, which Naruto did his best to ignore, his eyes lingering on her form for longer than he would have liked. Who he is none of your business. All that you should know is that he's a yukai who I asked to accompany me towards this meeting. Yasaka answered curtly, her amber orbs flickering to Naruto, who seemed to be in a staring contest with the silver-haired boy Azazel had brought with him. I see. He hummed at how secretive she was as he sent the blonde boy another glance. He looked no older than his own apprentice he had brought with him, and he could sense a small amount of chakra being used by him, most likely to hide his yukai features, which would mean Yasaka spoke the truth when she said he was a yukai. They seemed quite friendly with each other as well, seeing how comfortable they are in the other's presence to the point their shoulders were touching with how close they were sitting to another. He had also noticed she was holding his hand before she sat down, which made him speculate several possibilities. Well, unlike you, I'm not that secretive. As to my left you have my apprentice, Val, who I asked to accompany me. Hearing Azazel introduce him, he broke the staring contest he had with the blonde while sending the blonde woman, who's Kyoto's Yukai leader, a nod. Naruto himself refrained from quirking an eyebrow as the casual greeting the silver-haired boy had given Yasaka. It was probably the first time he had seen someone dismiss her that quickly. He had even seen Azazel eye her up and down briefly before controlling himself. So, what did you call a meeting for? Straight to the point, I see. Azazel joked, which Yasaka responded by looking the man in the eyes, showing that there was nothing funny about the current situation. Azazel-san, I don't need to remind you what has happened a couple years ago between our faction, do I now? A quick shake of his head was her answer. Good, because if that would be the case we would be done here. Now, tell me why you called this meeting, as I can assure you that there are other things I would rather be doing at the moment. Or rather someone, but she wasn't going to say that out loud. She and Naruto had decided to keep their relationship a secret for as long as they possibly could. Only the Yukai and Sarorg were aware that they were in a romantic relationship, though no one aside from herself, Naruto and Amaterasu, knew she was pregnant, something they too wanted to keep. Who knows what someone might try with the knowledge that she was weakened. Of course, once the signs of pregnancy would become actually noticeable, which at the moment it was not, they would reveal it. I called this meeting that recently I've had several of my men being killed. Are you implying I gave them an order to? Well, I want to say no, but the fact that devils keep to themselves in the underworld and angels don't operate around here, you can see where I'm coming from, right? Azazel, Yasaka began removing any sort of respective suffix for the man she previously used. While I personally gave no such order, I can't say I blame them, nor will I punish them. The Yukai, unlike the three biblical factions and some other minor ones, are the closest when it comes to relations with humans. As such, I wouldn't be surprised if it was retaliation from your people's indiscriminate slaughter of humans or the rape of women your men often commit. It helps that Amaterasu, a supreme goddess, asked me personally to make sure her people, civilians in this case, are unharmed for the most part. So if that bothers you, I suggest taking it up with her. I can even arrange a meeting if you want. Azazel paled at the mention of Amaterasu, having been on the end of her fury years ago due to what had happened between his faction and the Yukai. She had appeared right in front of him when he was walking through a remote part of North Japan before giving him a verbal lashing and a threat that she would ban any fallen from entering Japan if anything like this would happen in the future. It had been the closest to death he had been since the days of the Great War. Opening his mouth to speak, he promptly closed it as he couldn't find the proper words to come out, and didn't want to risk upsetting her by spouting some nonsense. With how shaky relations were between his faction and the Yukai, one wrong word and they could end up being kicked out of Japan for who knows how long. If this is all that you wanted to speak with me for, then we are done. She sent Naruto a nod before standing up along with him, and before Azazel could speak, Yasaka, along with Naruto, had left the building they were in. Humph, the nerve of that man. Yasaka huffed in annoyance. All this for some useless meeting that did nothing but get on my nerves. Sensing her growing annoyance, Naruto pulled her close, one arm around her waist as he let her rest her head on his shoulder. It worked, as Yasaka took a few deep breaths to calm herself lest she wishes for the surroundings to begin burning from her foxfire. Thank you, Naruto-kun. She pecked him on the cheek, which caused a small blush to form, mainly due to the giggling that came from a small group of girls wearing school outfits. He stopped in his steps for a second as he realized something and turned to his companion. Say, Yasaka, didn't you say that for those under 18 it's mandatory to attend school? Yes, why? Well, does that mean I have to go to school as well? I mean, back home we learn how to successfully kill somebody, which is not something that'll be of much use here, I assume. Huh, I didn't thought of that, to be honest, she replied with a short laugh. But no, you don't have to go to school if you don't want to, Naruto-kun. It's not going to help you, at least not with the way you are. You're far from stupid and understand the basics in general. It would also lessen the time we get to spend together, which I don't like, especially not with a little one on the way. Yasaka placed her hands on her stomach to show what she was talking about. Yeah, I don't want either. The academy back home was more than enough for me. He scratched the back of his head with his free hand. Where are we going, by the way? The train station is the other way, if I remember correctly. We're changing plans, Naruto-kun. We're going to explore Tokyo today and spend the night in one of the hotels here before returning early in the morning. Is that okay? I'm fine with it, but do the people in Kyoto know? Yasaka nodded her head. No, not yet, but they will soon. It should be fine though, as I checked up on the ley lines before we left. Oh? Naruto then shrugged. Well, if you say so. I would have to be stupid to decline spending more time with you. Smart answer. Grabbing a hold of his hand, she flashed him a beautiful smile before they began their exploration of the large city. It wasn't often she could get out of Kyoto, and intended to take full advantage of it. A pleasure-filled sigh escaped Yasaka's lips. Leaning back, she came to rest against the chest of her beloved. Her head was tilted slightly to the side as from the corner of her eyes she watched him smile softly at her. The two were currently seated comfortably in their bath, the hot water doing wonders to her body, calming her aching muscles she was suffering due to her pregnancy. A smile of her own formed as she felt his hands that were previously rubbing up and down her legs move to her stomach, where they began to softly rub circles on the clearly visible baby bump she was showing. She placed her own hands on top of his, purring softly as Naruto began laying kisses on her shoulders. Did the doctor say how much longer till you're due? Naruto asked her softly as he trailed kisses up her neck, watching as she writhed from the ministrations he was giving her. They said it was going to be soon. Yasaka's breath hitched as he bit down the side of her neck. Not in a painful way or anything. No, it was very welcoming, which she showed as she moved her head to the side, giving him more access to her skin. Soon, Naruto mumbled as he removed himself from her neck and leaned backwards against the tub. A groan escaped his mouth moments later as he felt Yasaka wiggle her rear against a certain part of his anatomy. Opening a single eye, he looked at her to see her flash him a cheeky grin, showing what she did was on purpose. Growling, he moved his hands up from her stomach to her. He cupped both mounds, giving it a nice squeeze as her pregnancy had caused them to grow, if only by a bit. His actions elicited a surprised moan from the blonde, who once more grounded her rear against his crotch. Damn it, Yasaka! He got out in between groans. The blonde vixen turned her head before leaning in with a kiss, stifling any protest he might have. You really are insatiable, you know? He managed to tell her between their lip lock, taking advantage of the short moments they both needed to regain her breath. I don't see you complaining, she said way too sultrily for his liking as she somehow managed to turn herself around so she was now sitting in his lap, her lower lips coming in contact with his now hard member. Naruto fought back a moan from the wonderful sensations he was experiencing, now noticing how much lust her amber eyes were showing along with the way her chest was heaving as she panted in pure need. Honestly, Naruto wasn't sure if her being pregnant was a gift or a curse. On one hand, he was going to be a father soon. He was going to have a family of his own, something he wanted ever since he could remember. Yet, on the other hand, Yasaka was in heat almost 24/7. While he knew it was a weird thing to complain about, especially with the knowledge of how many would love to be in his shoes, it honestly got tiring having sex every day for hours on end. Even before he had knocked her up, they had done it daily, yet that was manageable. Now, however, he was dealing with a whole different side of her, though he knew, due to having read up on it, that it was mostly hormones that were affecting her. Though in retrospect he should be thankful that she was only horny, as he knew he could have had it worse if she had constant mood swings, which there was a possibility of. Thankfully that wasn't the case with her. She was a bit more clingy, which he didn't really mind. He was constantly worried about something happening to her ever since the news of her being pregnant had spread throughout the supernatural world. His fears weren't unfounded though, as over the past few months there had been an increase in supernatural beings entering, or rather attempting to enter, Kyoto, most likely to confirm on whether or not Yasaka was indeed pregnant. He had suggested to Yasaka to increase the security around Kyoto, which she thankfully did, though she told him she had thought about doing so regardless of his suggestion. Nevertheless, it was done in time, as just days later there was a large influx in devils entering Kyoto, and several failed attempts made by fallen angels who were denied access entirely upon being noticed. Hearing his name repeatedly being called brought him back to reality to see Yasaka waving a hand in front of his eyes. He blinked a couple of times before quirking up an eyebrow. I'm sorry, I was lost in thought. He apologized, which was responded by with a frown and a cute pout. Rolling his eyes at her, he pecked her on the lips before asking if they were done, as they had been in the bath for quite some time. Yasaka nodded, and he got out first, grabbing a towel and began to dry himself off. Once done, he wrapped the towel around his waist before helping Yasaka out, lifting her up despite her protest, and sat her down on a nearby chair. She stopped her protests once she realized that he was ignoring her, and let him dry her hair and body, lifting up her arms and legs to make it easier on him. Warmth filled her, as she watched him doing so with a smile on his face that showed he didn't mind doing this the slightest. Once she was dried off, mostly at least, as there were a few drops here and there, he once again picked her up, carefully as to not to cause discomfort, as he exited the bathroom in favor for their bedroom that was attached to it. Any preferences? Naruto asked Yasaka as he lowered her onto the bed and made his way over to the closet. From her spot on the bed, Yasaka shook her head. Not really, Naruto-kun. As long as it's comfortable, I'm okay with it. Nodding, he hummed as his eyes trailed over the assortment of undergarments Yasaka had before picking out two he knew she found comfortable and were good on the eyes. He also grabbed a kimono for her to wear as they were less restricting compared to more casual clothes. Satisfied with his choices, he then moved to pick pieces of clothes for himself, which were white shorts along with a white with orange striped t-shirt. Closing the closet behind him, he walked over to Yasaka, who looked at what he had picked out for her and gave him a smile along with a nod, showing that he had picked well. Putting the articles of clothing on the bed, he went ahead and got dressed first before moving over and helping her with her bra and panties. She murmured a soft thanks before smirking sensually, which he wasn't able to see as he was busy with her bra. So, in an act that caught him off guard, Yasaka abruptly leaned back. Surprised by her move, Naruto lost his balance and fell backwards on the bed. Before he could lift himself up, a sudden weight joined his chest. Looking down, he was met with the blonde hair belonging to Yasaka as she rested her head on his chest as she lay on the bed with him, one of her hands protectively holding her stomach. "Stay," Yasaka spoke softly as she saw him reach for her. He stopped what he was attempting to do and looked at her for a moment before slowly nodding his head. With one hand, he grabbed a nearby pillow to rest his head on to make sure his neck wouldn't end up hurting. Naruto wasn't sure how long they stayed like this, but eventually, after quite some time, his eyes slowly closed as he drifted off to sleep.